probably next. But it's okay. I've done what I came here to do. I renegotiated the canal. The canal will now be in our hands. He just finished negotiating the treaty with Jimmy Carter. In June of that same year, just a couple of months later, he also went down in an airplane crash, which there's no question was executed by CIA-sponsored jackals. Tremendous amount of evidence that one of Torrijos' security guards handed him at the last moment as he was getting on the plane a tape recorder, a small tape recorder that contained a bomb. It is interesting to me how this system has continued pretty much the same way for years and years and years, except the economic hitmen have got better and better and better. Then we come up with, very recently, what happened in Venezuela. In 1998, where Chavez gets elected president, following a long line of presidents who had been very corrupt and basically destroyed the economy of the country. And Chavez was elected amidst all that. Chavez stood up to the United States, and he's done it primarily demanding that Venezuelan oil be used to help the Venezuelan people. Well, we didn't like that in the United States. So in 2002, a coup was staged, which there's no question in my mind, and most other people's minds, that the CIA was behind that coup. The way that coup was fomented was very reflective of what Kermit Roosevelt had done in Iran, of paying people to go out into the streets, to riot, to protest, to say this Chavez is very unpopular. You know, if you can get a few thousand people to do that in television, it can make it look like it's the whole country, and things start to mushroom. Except in the case of Chavez, he was smart enough, and the people were so strongly behind it that they overcame it, which was a phenomenal moment in the history of Latin America. Iraq actually is a perfect example of the way the whole system works. So we economic hitmen are the first line of defense. We go in and we try to corrupt the governments and get them to accept these huge loans, which we then use as leverage to basically own them. If we fail, as I failed in Panama with Omar Torrijos and in Ecuador with Jaime Roldos, men who refused to be corrupted, then the second line of defense is we send in the jackals. And the jackals either overthrow governments or they assassinate. And once that happens and a new government comes in, boy, it's going to toe the line because the new president knows what will happen if he doesn't. In the case of Iraq, both of those things failed. Economic hitmen were not able to get through to Saddam Hussein. We tried very hard. We tried to get him to accept a deal very similar to what the House of Saud had accepted in Saudi Arabia, but he wouldn't accept it. And so the jackals went in to take him out. They couldn't do it. His security was very good. After all, he had one time worked for the CIA. He'd been hired to assassinate a former president of Iraq and failed, but he knew the system. So in 91, we send in the troops and we take out the Iraqi military. So we assume at that point that Saddam Hussein is going to come around. We could have taken him out, of course, at that time, but we didn't want to. He's the kind of strong man we like. He controls his people. We thought he could control the Kurds and keep the Iranians in their border and keep pumping oil for us. And then once we took out his military, now he's going to come around. So the economic hitmen go back in the 90s without success. If they had had success, he'd still be running the country. We'd be selling him all the fighter jets he wants and everything else he wants. But they couldn't. They didn't have success. The jackals couldn't take him out again. So we sent the military in once again, and this time we did the complete job and took him out, and in the process created for ourselves some very, very lucrative construction deals. Had to reconstruct a country that we'd essentially destroyed, which is a pretty good deal if you own construction companies, big ones. So, Iraq shows the three stages. The economic hitmen failed there, the jackals failed there, and as a final measure, the military goes in. And in that way, we've really created an empire, but we've done it very, very subtly. It's clandestine. All the empires of the past were built on the military, and everybody knew they were building them. So the British knew they were building them, the French, the Germans, the Romans, the Greeks, and they were proud of it. And they always had some excuse, like spreading civilization, spreading some religion, something like that. But they knew they were doing it. We don't. The majority of the people in the United States have no idea that we're living off the benefits of a clandestine empire, that today there's more slavery in the world than ever before. And then you have to ask yourself, well, if it's an empire, then who's the emperor? Obviously, our presidents of the United States are not emperors. An emperor is someone who's not elected, doesn't serve a limited term, and doesn't report to anyone, essentially. So you can't classify our presidents that way. But we do have what I consider to be the equivalent of the emperor, and it's what I call the corporatocracy. The corporatocracy is this group of individuals who run our biggest corporations, and they really act as the emperor of this empire. They control our media, either through direct ownership or advertising. They control most of our politicians because they finance their campaigns, either through their corporations or through personal contributions that come out of the corporations. They're not elected. They don't serve a limited term. They don't report to anybody. And at the very top of the corporatocracy, you really can't tell whether a person's working for a private corporation or the government because they're always moving back and forth. So, you've got a guy who one moment is the president of a big construction company like Halliburton, and the next moment he's vice president of the United States, or the president who is in the oil business. And this is true whether you've got Democrats or Republicans in the office. You have to moving back and forth through the revolving door. And in a way, our government is invisible a lot of the time, and its policies are carried out by our corporations on one level or another. And then again, the policies of the government are basically forged by the corporatocracy and then presented to the government. They become government policy. So it's an incredibly cozy relationship. This isn't a conspiracy theory type of thing. These people don't have to get together and plot to do things. They all basically work under one primary assumption, and that is that they must maximize profits regardless of the social and environmental costs.
This process of manipulation by the corporatocracy through the use of debt, bribery, and political overthrow is called globalization. Just as the Federal Reserve keeps the American public in a position of indentured servitude through perpetual debt, inflation, and interest, the World Bank and IMF serve this role on a global scale. The basic scam is simple. Put a country in debt either by its own indiscretion or through corrupting the leader of that country, then impose conditionalities or structural adjustment policies, often consisting of the following. Currency devaluation. When the value of a currency drops, so does everything valued in it. This makes indigenous resources available to predator countries at a fraction of their worth. Large funding cuts for social programs. These usually include education and healthcare, compromising the well-being and integrity of the society, leaving the public vulnerable to exploitation. Privatization of state-owned enterprises. This means that socially important systems can be purchased and regulated by foreign corporations for profit. For example, in 1999, the World Bank insisted that the Bolivian government sell the public water system of its third largest city to a subsidy of the U.S. corporation Bechtel. As soon as this occurred, water bills for the already impoverished local residents skyrocketed. It wasn't until after a full-blown revolt by the people that the Bechtel contract was nullified. Then there's trade liberalization, or the opening up of the economy through removing any restrictions on foreign trade. This allows for a number of abusive economic manifestations, such as transnational corporations bringing in their own mass-produced products, undercutting the indigenous production and ruining local economies. An example is Jamaica, which, after accepting loans and conditionalities from the World Bank, lost its largest cash crop markets due to competition with Western imports. Today, countless farmers are out of work, for they are unable to compete with the large corporations. Another variation is the creation of numerous, seemingly unnoticed, unregulated, inhumane sweatshop factories, which take advantage of the imposed economic hardship. Additionally, due to production deregulation, environmental destruction is perpetual, as a country's resources are often exploited by the indifferent corporations while outputting large amounts of deliberate pollution.
The largest environmental lawsuit in the history of the world today is being brought on behalf of 30,000 Ecuadorian Amazonian people against Texaco, which is now owned by Chevron. So today it's against Chevron, but for activities conducted by Texaco. Estimated to be more than 18 times what Exxon Valdez dumped into the coast of Alaska. In the case of Ecuador, it wasn't an accident. The oil companies did it intentionally. They knew they were doing it to save money out there rather than arranging for proper disposal.
Furthermore, a cursory glance at the performance record of the World Bank reveals that the institution, which publicly claims to help poor countries develop and alleviate poverty, has done nothing but increase poverty and the wealth gap, while corporate profits soar. In 1960, the income gap between the fifth of the world's people in the richest countries versus the fifth in the poorest countries was 30 to 1. By 1998, it was 74 to 1. While global GNP rose 40% between 1970 and 1985, those in poverty actually increased by 17%. While from 1985 to 2000, those living on less than $1 a day increased by 18%. Even the Joint Economic Committee of the U.S. Congress admitted that there is a mere 40% success rate of all World Bank projects. In the late 1960s, the World Bank intervened in Ecuador with large loans. During the next 30 years, poverty grew from 50% to 70%. Under or unemployment grew from 15 to 70%. Public debt increased from 240 million to 16 billion, while the share of resources allocated to the poor went from 20% to 6%. In fact, by the year 2000, 50% of Ecuador's national budget had to be allocated for paying its debts. It is important to understand the World Bank is, in fact, a U.S. bank, supporting U.S. interests. For the United States holds veto power over decisions, as it is the largest provider of capital. And where did it get this money? You guessed it. It made it out of thin air through the fractional reserve banking system. Of the world's top 100 economies, as based on annual GDP, 51 are corporations, and 47 of that 51 are U.S.-based. Walmart, General Motors, and Exxon are more economically powerful than Saudi Arabia, Poland, Norway, South Africa, Finland, Indonesia, and many others. And as protective trade barriers are broken down, currencies tossed together and manipulated in floating markets, and state economies overturned in favor of open competition and global capitalism, the empire expands.
So now your says, "I'll bring your food."
You get up on your little 21-inch screen and howl about America and democracy. There is no America. There is no democracy. There is only IBM and ITT and AT&T and DuPont, Dow, Union Carbide, and Exxon. Those are the nations of the world today. What do you think the Russians talk about in their councils of state? Karl Marx? They get out their linear programming charts, statistical decision theories, minimax solutions, and compute the price-cost probabilities of their transactions and investments, just like we do. We no longer live in a world of nations and ideologies, Mr. Beale. The world is a college of corporations, inexorably determined by the immutable bylaws of business. The world is a business, Mr. Beale.
The world is being taken over. by a handful of business powers who dominate the natural resources we need to live while controlling the money we need to obtain these resources. The end result will be world monopoly, based not on human life, but financial and corporate power. And as the inequality grows, naturally more and more people are becoming desperate. So the establishment was forced to come up with a new way to deal with anyone who challenges the system. So they gave birth to terrorist. The term terrorist is an empty distinction, designed for any person or group who chooses to challenge the establishment. This isn't to be confused with the fictional Al-Qaeda, which was actually the name of a computer database for the US-supported Mujahideen in the 1980s.
No Islamic Army terrorist group.
In 2007, the Department of Defense received $161.8 billion for the so-called global war on terrorism. According to the National Counterterrorism Center, in 2004, roughly 2,000 people were killed internationally due to supposed terrorist acts. Of that number, 70 were American. Using this number as a general average, which is extremely generous, it is interesting to note that twice as many people die from peanut allergies a year than from terrorist acts. Concurrently, the leading cause of death in America is coronary heart disease, killing roughly 450,000 each year. And in 2007, the government's allocation of funds for research on this issue was about $3 billion. This means that the U.S. government in 2007 spent 54 times the amount for preventing terrorism than it spent for preventing a disease which kills 6,600 times more people annually than terrorism does.
That's disgusting.
Yet, as the name terrorism and Al-Qaeda are arbitrarily stamped on every news report relating to any action taken against U.S. interests, the myth grows wider. In mid-2008, the U.S. Attorney General actually proposed that the U.S. Congress officially declare war against the fantasy. Not to mention, as of July 2008, there are now over 1 million people currently on the U.S. terrorist watch list. These so-called counterterrorism measures, of course, have nothing to do with social protection, and everything to do with preserving the establishment amongst the growing anti-American sentiment both domestically and internationally, which is legitimately founded on the greed-based corporate empire expansion that is exploiting the world. The true terrorists of our world do not meet at the docks at midnight or scream Allah Akbar before some violent action. The true terrorists of our world wear $5,000 suits and work in the highest positions of finance, government, and business. So, what do? How do we stop a system of greed and corruption that has so much power and momentum? How do we stop this aberrant group behavior which feels no compassion for, say, the millions slaughtered in Iraq and Afghanistan, so the corporatocracy can control energy resources and opium production for Wall Street profit?
No, see, that's always. I'm getting your secret.
How do we stop a system of greed and corruption that condemns poor populations to sweatshop slavery for the benefit of Madison Avenue? Or that engineers false flag terror attacks for for the sake of manipulation, or that generates built-in modes of social operation which are inherently exploitative, or that systematically reduces civil liberties and violates human rights in order to protect itself from its own shortcomings. How do we deal with the numerous covert institutions, such as the Council on Foreign Relations, the Trilateral Commission, and the Bilderberg Group, and other undemocratically elected groups which, behind closed doors, collude to control the political, financial, social, and environmental elements of our lives? In order to find the answer, we must first find the true underlying cause. For the fact is, the selfish, corrupt, power, and profit-based groups are not the true source of the problem. They are symptoms.
My name is Jock Fresco. I'm an industrial designer and a social engineer. I'm very much interested in society in developing a system that might be sustainable for all people. First of all, the word corruption is a monetary invention. That aberrant behavior that's disruptive to the well-being of people, while you're dealing with human behavior. And human behavior appears to be environmentally determined, meaning if you were raised by the Seminole Indians as a baby, never saw anything else, you'd hold that value system. And this goes for nations, it goes for individuals, for families. They try to indoctrinate their children to their particular faith and their country and make them feel like they're part of that. And they build a society which they call established. They establish a workable point of view and tend to perpetuate that, whereas all societies are really emergent, not established. And so they fight new ideas that would interfere with the establishment. Governments try to perpetuate that which keeps them in power. People are not elected to political office to change things. They're put there to keep things the way they are. So you see, the basis of corruption is in our society. Let me make it clear. All nations, then, are basically corrupt because they tend to uphold existing institutions. I don't mean to uphold or downgrade all nations, but communism, socialism, fascism, the free enterprise system, and all other subcultures are the same. They are all basically corrupt.
The most fundamental characteristic of our social institutions is the necessity for self-preservation. Whether dealing with a corporation, a religion, or a government, the foremost interest is to preserve the institution itself. For instance, the last thing an oil company would ever want is the utilization of energy that was outside of its control, for it makes that company less relevant to society. Likewise, the Cold War and the collapse of the Soviet Union was, in reality, a way to preserve and perpetuate the established economic and global hegemony of the United States. Similarly, religions condition people to feel guilty for natural inclinations, each claiming to offer the only path to forgiveness and salvation. At the heart of this institutional self-preservation lies the monetary system, for it is money that provides the means for power and survival. Therefore, just as a poor person might be forced to steal in order to survive, it is a natural inclination to do whatever is needed to continue an institution's profitability. This makes it inherently difficult for profit-based institutions to change, for it puts in jeopardy not only the survival of large groups of people, but also the coveted materialistic lifestyles associated with affluence and power. Therefore, the paralyzing necessity to preserve an institution, regardless of its social relevance, is largely rooted in the need for money or profit.
What's in it for me is why people think. And so if a man makes money selling a certain product, naturally he's going to fight the existence of another product that may threaten his institution. Therefore, people cannot be fair, and people do not trust each other. A guy will come over to you and say, I got just the house you're looking for. He's a salesman. When the doctor says, I think your kidney has to come out, I don't know if he's trying to pay off a yacht or that my kidney has to come out. It's hard in a monetary system to trust people. If you came into my store and I said, this lamp that I've got is pretty good, but the lamp next door is much better, I wouldn't be in business very long. It wouldn't work. If I were ethical, it wouldn't work. So when you say industry cares for people, that's not true. They can't afford to be ethical. So your system is not designed to serve the well-being of people. If you still don't understand that, there would be no outsourcing of jobs if they cared about people. Industry does not care. They only hire people because it hasn't been automated yet. So don't talk about decency and ethics. We cannot afford it and remain in business.
It is important to point out that regardless of the social system, whether fascist, socialist, capitalist, or communist, the underlying mechanism is still money, labor, and competition. Communist China is no less capitalistic than the United States. The only difference is the degree by which the state intervenes in enterprise. The reality is that monetaryism, so to speak, is the true mechanism that guides the interests of all the countries on the planet. The most aggressive and hence dominant variation of this monetaryism is the free enterprise system. The fundamental perspective, as put forth by early free market economists like Adam Smith, is that self-interest in competition leads to social prosperity, as the act of competition creates incentive, which motivates people to persevere. However, what isn't talked about is how a competition-based economy invariably leads to strategic corruption, power and wealth consolidation, social stratification, technological paralysis, labor abuse, and, ultimately, a covert form of government dictatorship by the rich elite. The word corruption is often defined as moral perversion. If a company dumps toxic waste into the ocean to save money, most people recognize this as corrupt behavior. On a more subtle level, when Walmart moves into a small town and forces small businesses to shut down for they are unable to compete, a gray area emerges. For what exactly is Walmart doing wrong? Why should they care about mom-and-pop organizations they destroy? Yet, even more subtly, when a person gets fired from their job because a new machine has been created which can do the work for less money, people tend to just accept that as the way it is, not seeing the inherent corrupt inhumanity of such an action. Because the fact is, whether it is dumping toxic waste, having a monopoly enterprise, or downsizing the workforce, the motive is the same: profit. They are all different degrees of the same self-preserving mechanism, which always puts the well-being of people second to monetary gain. Therefore, corruption is not some byproduct of monetarism. It is the very foundation. And while most people acknowledge this tendency on one level or another, the majority remains naive as to the broad ramifications of having such a selfish mechanism as the guiding mentality in society.
Internal documents show that after this company positively, absolutely knew that they had a medication that was infected with the AIDS virus, they took the product off the market in the U.S. and then they dumped it in France, Europe, Asia, and Latin America. The U.S. government allowed it to happen. The FDA allowed this to happen. And now the government is completely looking the other way. Thousands of innocent hemophiliacs have died from the AIDS virus. This company knew absolutely that it was infected with AIDS. They dumped it because they wanted to turn this disaster into a profit.
So you see, you have built-in corruption. We're all chiseling off each other, and you can't expect decency in that sort of thing. And feeling that, they don't know who to elect. They think in terms of a democracy, which is not possible in a monetary-based economy. If you have more money to advertise your position, the position you desire in government, that isn't a democracy. It serves those in positions of differential advantage. So it's always a dictatorship of the elitists, the financially wealthy.
It is an interesting observation to note how seemingly unknown personalities magically appear on the scene as presidential candidates. Then, before you know it, somehow you are left to choose from a small group of extremely wealthy people who suspiciously have the same broad social view. Obviously, it's a joke. The people placed on the ballot are done so because they have been pre-decided to be acceptable by the established financial powers who actually run the show. Yet, many who understand this illusion of democracy often think, if only we could just get our honest, ethical politicians in power, then we would be okay. Well, while this idea, of course, seems reasonable in our established-oriented worldview, it is, unfortunately, another fallacy. For when it really comes down to what is actually important, the institution of politics, and thus politicians themselves, have absolutely no true relevance as to what makes our world and society function.
It's not politicians that can solve problems. They have no technical capabilities. They don't know how to solve problems. Even if they were sincere, they don't know how to solve problems. It's the technicians that produce the desalination plants. It's the technicians that give you electricity, that give you motor vehicles, that heat your house and cool it in the summertime. It's technology that solves problems, not politics. Politics cannot solve problems because they're not trained to do so.
Very few people today stop and consider what it is that actually improves their lives. Is it money? Obviously not. One cannot eat money or stuff money into their car to get it to run. Is it politics? All politicians can do is create laws, establish budgets, and declare war. Is it religion? Of course not. Religion creates nothing except intangible emotional solace for those who require it. The true gift that we as human beings have, which has been solely responsible for everything that has improved our lives, is technology. What is technology? Technology is a pencil which allows one to solidify ideas on paper for communication. Technology is an automobile which allows one to travel faster than feet would allow. Technology is a pair of eyeglasses which enables sight for those who need it. Applied technology itself is merely an extension of human attributes which reduces human effort, freeing humans from a particular chore or problem. Imagine what your life would be like today without a telephone, or an oven, or a computer, or an airplane. Everything in your home, which you take for granted, from a doorbell, to a table, to a dishwasher, is technology, generated from the creative, scientific ingenuity of human technicians, not money, politics, or religion. These are false institutions.
And writing your congressman is fantastic. They tell you to write your congressman if you want something done. The men in Washington should be at the forefront of technology, the forefront of human study, the forefront of crime, all the factors that shape human behavior. You don't have to write your congressman. What kind of people are they that are appointed to do that job? In the future, we'll have great difficulty. And the question that's raised by politicians is, how much will a project cost? The question is not, how much will it cost? Do we have the resources? And we have the resources today to house everyone, build hospitals all over the world, build schools all over the world, the finest equipment and labs for teaching and doing medical research. So you see, we have all that, but we're in a monetary system. And in the monetary system, there's profit.
And what is the fundamental mechanism that drives the profit system besides self-interest? What is it exactly that maintains that competitive edge at its core? Is it high efficiency and sustainability? No, that isn't part of their design. Nothing produced in our profit-based society is even remotely sustainable or efficient. If it was, there wouldn't be a multi-million-dollar-a-year service industry for automobiles, nor would the average lifespan for most electronics be less than 3 months before they're obsolete. Is it abundance? Absolutely not. Abundance, as based on the laws of supply and demand, is actually a negative thing. If a diamond company finds 10 times the usual amount of diamonds during their mining, it means the supply of diamonds has increased, which means the cost and profit per diamond drops. The fact is, efficiency, sustainability, and abundance are enemies of profit. To put it into a word, it is the mechanism of scarcity that increases profits.
What is scarcity? Based on keeping products valuable. Slowing up production on oil raises the price. Maintaining scarcity of diamonds keeps the price high. They burned diamonds at the Kimberley diamond mine and made a carbon.
What does it mean for society when scarcity, either produced naturally or through manipulation, is a beneficial condition for industry? It means that sustainability and abundance will never ever occur in a profit system, for it simply goes against the very nature of the structure. Therefore, it is impossible to have a world without war or poverty. It is impossible to continually advance technology to its most efficient and productive states. And, most dramatically, it is impossible to expect human beings to behave in truly ethical or decent ways.
People use the word instinct because they can't account for the behavior. They sit back and they evaluate with their lack of knowledge, and they say things like, humans are built a certain way, greed is a natural thing, as though they've worked for years on it, and it's no more natural than wearing clothing.
What we want to do is to eliminate the causes of the problems, eliminate the processes that produce greed and bigotry and prejudice and people taking advantage of one another and elitism, eliminating the need for prisons and welfare. We have always had these problems because we have always lived within scarcity and barter and monetary systems that produce scarcity.
If you eradicate the conditions that generate what you call socially offensive behavior, it does not exist. You guys say, well, isn't that inborn? No, it's not.
There is no human nature. There's human behavior, and that's always been changed throughout history. You're not born with bigotry and greed and corruption and hatred. You pick that up within the society.
War, poverty, corruption, hunger, misery, human suffering will not change in a monetary system. That is, there'll be very little significant change. It's going to take the redesign of our culture, our values, and it has to be related to the carrying capacity of the earth, not some human opinion or some politician's notions of the way the world ought to be, or some religious notions of the conduct of human affairs. And that's what the Venus Project is about. The society that we're about to talk about is a society that is free of all the old superstitions, incarceration, prisons, police, cruelty, and law. All laws will disappear, and the professions will disappear that are no longer valid, such as stockbrokers, bankers, advertising, gone forever, because it's no longer relevant.
When we understand that it is technology devised by human ingenuity which frees humanity and increases our quality of life, we then realize that the most important focus we can have is on the intelligent management of the Earth's resources. For it is from these natural resources we gain the materials to continue our path of prosperity. Understanding this, we then see that money fundamentally exists as a barrier to these resources, for virtually everything has a financial cost. And why do we need money to obtain these resources? Because of real or assumed scarcity. We don't usually pay for air and tap water because it is in such high abundance, selling it would be pointless. So then, logically speaking, if resources and technologies applicable to creating everything in our societies, such as houses, cities, and transportation, were in high enough abundance, there would be no reason to sell anything. Likewise, if automation and machinery was so technologically advanced as to relieve human beings of labor, there would be no reason to have a job. And with these social aspects taken care of, there would be no reason to have money at all. So the ultimate question remains: do we on Earth have enough resources and technological understanding to create a society of such abundance that everything we have now could be available without a price tag and without the need for submission through employment? Yes, we do. We have the resources and technology to enable this at a minimum, along with the ability to raise the standard of living so high that people in the future will look back at our civilization now and gawk at how primitive and immature our society was.
What the Venus Project proposes is an entirely different system that's updated to present-day knowledge.
We've never given scientists the problem of how do you design a society which would eliminate boring and monotonous jobs, that would eliminate accidents in transportation, that would enable people to have a high standard of living, that would eliminate poisons in our food, that would give us other sources of energy that are clean and efficient. We can do that out there. The major difference between a resource-based economy and a monetary system is that a resource-based economy is really concerned with people and their well-being, where a monetary system has become so distorted that the concerns of the people are really secondary, if they're there at all. The products that are turned out are for how much money you can get. If there is a problem in society and you can't earn money from solving that problem, then it won't be done. The resource-based economy is really not close to anything that's been tried. And with all our technology today, we can create abundance. It could be used to improve everyone's lifestyle. Abundance all over the world if we use our technology wisely and maintain the environment.
It's a very different system, and it's very hard to talk about because the public is not that well enough informed as to the state of technology. At present, we don't have to burn fossil fuels. We don't have to use anything that would contaminate the environment. There are many sources of energy available.
Alternative energy solutions pushed by the establishment, such as hydrogen, biomass, and even nuclear, are highly insufficient, dangerous, and exist only to perpetuate the profit structure that industry has created. When we look beyond the propaganda and self-serving solutions put forth by the energy companies, we find a seemingly endless stream of clean, abundant, and renewable energy for generating power. Solar and wind energy are well known to the public, but the true potential of these mediums remains unexpressed. Solar energy, derived from the sun, has such abundance that 1 hour of light at high noon contains more energy than what the entire world consumes in a year. If we could capture 1/100% of this energy, the world would never have to use oil, gas, or anything else. The question then is not availability, but the technology to harness it. And there are many advanced mediums today which could accomplish just that, if they were not hindered by the need to compete for market share with the established energy power structures. Then there's wind energy. Wind energy has long been denounced as weak, and due to being location-driven, impractical. This is simply not true. The U.S. Department of Energy admitted in 2007 that if wind was fully harvested in just 3 of America's 50 states, it could power the entire nation. And then there are the rather unknown mediums of tidal and wave power. Tidal power is derived from tidal shifts in the ocean. Installing turbines which capture this movement generates energy. In the United Kingdom, 42 sites are currently noted as available, forecasting that 34% of all the UK's energy could come from tidal power alone. Wave power, which extracts energy from the surface motions of the ocean, is estimated to have a global potential of up to 80,000 terawatt-hours a year. This means 50% of the entire planet's energy usage could be produced from this medium alone. Now, it is important to point out that tidal, wave, solar, and wind power requires virtually no preliminary energy to harness, unlike coal, oil, gas, biomass, hydrogen, and all the others. In combination, these 4 mediums alone, if efficiently harnessed through technology, could power the world forever. That being said, there happens to be another form of clean, renewable energy which trumps them all: geothermal power. Geothermal energy utilizes what is called heat mining, which, through a simple process using water, is able to generate massive amounts of clean energy. In 2006, an MIT report on geothermal energy found that 13,000 zettajoules of power are currently available in the Earth, with the possibility of 2,000 zettajoules being easily tappable with improved technology. The total energy consumption of all the countries on the planet is about half of a zettajoule a year. This means about 4,000 years of planetary power could be harnessed in this medium alone. And when we understand that the Earth's heat generation is constantly renewed, this energy is really limitless and could be used forever. These energy sources are only a few of the clean, renewable mediums available, and as time goes on, we will find more. The grand realization is that we have total energy abundance without the need for pollution, traditional conservation, or, in fact, a price tag. And what about transportation? The prevailing means of transportation in our societies is by automobile and aircraft, both of which predominantly need fossil fuels to run. In the case of the automobile, the battery technology needed to power an electric car that can go over 100 miles an hour for over 200 miles on one charge exists, and has existed for many years. However, due to battery patents controlled by the oil industry, which limits their availability to maintain market share, coupled with political pressure from the energy industry, the accessibility and affordability of this technology is limited. There is absolutely no reason other than pure, corrupt profit interest that every single vehicle in the world cannot be electric and utterly clean, with zero need for gasoline. As far as airplanes, it is time we realize that this means of travel is inefficient, cumbersome, slow, and causes far too much pollution. This is a maglev train. It uses magnets for propulsion. It is fully suspended by a magnetic field and requires less than 2% of the energy used for plane travel. The train has no wheels, so nothing can wear out. The current maximum speed of versions of this technology, as used in Japan, is 361 miles per hour. However, this version of the technology is very dated. An organization called ET3, which has connections with the Venus Project, has established a tube-based maglev that can travel up to 4,000 miles per hour in a motionless, frictionless tube, which can go over land or underwater. Imagine going from LA to New York for an extended lunch break, or from Washington, D.C. to Beijing, China in 2 hours. This is the future of continental and intercontinental travel. Fast, clean, with only a fraction of the energy usage we use today for the same means. In fact, between maglev technology, advanced battery storage, and geothermal energy, there would be no reason to ever burn fossil fuels again. And we can do this now if we were not held back by the paralyzing profit structure.
Now, America is inclined toward fascism. It has a propensity by its dominant philosophy and religion to uphold the fascist point of view. American industry is essentially a fascist institution. If you don't understand that, the minute you punch that time clock, you walk into a dictatorship.
We're given notions about the respectability of work, and I really look at it as being paid slavery.
They're brought up to believe that you shall earn your living by the sweat of your brow. That holds people back. Freeing people from drudgery, repetitive jobs which make them ignorant. You rob them. In our society, that is a resource-based economy, machines free people. You see, we can't imagine that because we've never known that kind of world.
If we look back at history, we see a very clear pattern of machine automation slowly replacing human labor. From the disappearance of the elevator man to the near full automation of an automobile production plant, the fact is, as technology grows, the need for humans in the workforce will continually be diminished. This creates a serious clash, which proves the falseness of the monetary-based labor system. For human employment is in direct competition with technological development. Therefore, given the fundamental priority of profit by industry, people through time will be continually laid off and replaced by machine.
But when industry takes on the machine, instead of shortening the workday, they downsize. You lose your job. So you have a right to fear machines.
In a high-technology, resource-based economy, it is conservative to say that about 90% of all current occupations could be phased out by machines, freeing humans to live their life without servitude, for this is the point of technology itself. And through time, with nanotechnology and other highly advanced forms of science, it is not far-fetched to see how even complex medical procedures could be performed by machines as well, and based on the pattern, with much higher success rates than humans get today. The path is clear, but our monetary-based structure, which requires labor for income, blocks this progress. For humans need jobs in order to survive. The bottom line is that this system must go, or we will never be free, and technology will be constantly paralyzed.
We have machines that clean out sewers. It frees a human being from doing that. So look at machines as extensions of human performance.
Furthermore, many occupations today will have simply no basis to exist in a resource-based economy, such as anything associated with the management of money, advertising, along with the legal system itself. For without money, a great majority of the crimes that are committed today would never occur. Virtually all forms of crime are a consequence of the monetary system, either directly or by neuroses inflicted through financial deprivation. Therefore, laws themselves could eventually become extinct.
Instead of putting up a sign, drive carefully, slippery when wet, put abrasive in the highway so it's not slippery when wet. And if a person gets in a car that's drunk and the car oscillates a great deal, there's a little pendulum that swings up and back, and that'll pull the car over to the side. Not a law. Solution. Put sonar and radar in automobiles so they can't hit one another. Man-made laws are attempts to deal with occurring problems, and not knowing how to solve them, they make a law.
In the United States, the most privatized, capitalist country on the planet, it should come as no surprise that it also has the largest prison population in the world, growing every year. Statistically, most of these people are uneducated and come from poor, deprived societies. And, contrary to propaganda, it is this environmental conditioning which lures them into criminal and violent behavior. However, society looks the other way in regard to this point. The legal and prison systems are just more examples of how our society avoids examining the root causes of behavior. Billions are spent each year on prisons and police, while only a fraction is spent on programs for poverty, which is one of the most fundamental variables responsible for crime to begin with. And as long as we have an economic system which prefers and in fact creates scarcity and deprivation, crime will never go away.
If people have access to the necessities of life without servitude, debt, barter, trade, they behave very differently. You want all these things available without a price tag. Now then, you gotta have a price tag. Well, what'll motivate people? Man gets everything he wants. They just lay around in the sun. This is the myth they perpetuate. People in our culture are trained to believe that the monetary system produces incentive. If they have access to things, why should they want to do anything? They will lose their incentive. That's what you're taught to support the monetary system.
When you take money out of the scenario, there would be different incentives, very different incentives.
When people have access to the necessities of life, their incentives change. What about the moon and the stars? New incentives arise. If you make a painting that you enjoy, you will enjoy giving it to other people, not selling it.
I think most of the education that I've seen today is essentially producing a person for a job. It's very specialized. They're not generalists. People don't know a lot about a lot of different subjects. I don't think you could get people to go to war if they knew a lot about a lot of things. I think education is mostly rote, and they're not taught how to solve problems. They're not given the tools, emotionally or within their own field, of how to do critical thinking. A resource-based economy, the education would be very different.
Our society's major concern is mental development and to motivate each person to their highest potential. Because our philosophy is the smarter people are, the richer the world, because everybody becomes a contributor. The smarter your kids are, the better my life will be, because they'll be contributing more constructively to the environment and to my life, because everything that we devise within a resource-based economy would be applied to society. There would be nothing to hold it back. Patriotism, weapons, armies, navies, all that is a sign that we're not civilized yet. Kids will ask their parents, didn't you see the necessity of machines? Dad, couldn't you see that war was inevitable when you produce scarcity? Isn't it obvious? Of course the kid will understand that you were pinheads, raised merely to serve the established institutions. We're such an abominable, sick society that we won't make the history book. They just say that large nations took land from smaller nations, used force and violence. You'll get history talked about as corrupt behavior all the way along until the beginning of the civilized world. That's when all the nations worked together. World unification, working toward common good for all human beings, and without anyone being subservient to anyone else. Without social stratification, whether it be technical elitism or any other kind of elitism, eradicated from the face of the earth. The state does nothing because there is no state. There is no state. The system I advocate, a resource-based global economy, is not perfect. It's just a lot better than what we have. We can never achieve perfection.
The social values of our society, which has manifested in perpetual warfare, corruption, oppressive laws, social stratification, irrelevant superstitions, environmental destruction, and a despotic, socially indifferent, profit-oriented ruling class, is fundamentally the result of a collective ignorance of two of the most basic insights humans can have about reality, the emergent and symbiotic aspects of natural law. The emergent nature of reality is that all systems, whether it is knowledge, society, technology, philosophy, or any other creation, will, when uninhibited, undergo fluid, perpetual change. What we consider commonplace today, such as modern communication and transportation, would have been unimaginable in ancient times. Likewise, the future will contain technologies, realizations, and social structures that we cannot even fathom in the present. We have gone from alchemy to chemistry, from a geocentric universe to a heliocentric, from believing that demons were the cause of illness to modern medicine. This development shows no sign of ending, and it is this awareness that aligns us and leads us on a continuous path to growth and progress. Static, empirical knowledge does not exist. Rather, it is the insight of the emergence of all systems we must recognize. This means we must be open to new information at all times, even if it threatens our current belief system and hence identities. Sadly, society today has failed to recognize this, and the established institutions continue to paralyze growth by preserving outdated social structures. Simultaneously, the population suffers from a fear of change, for their conditioning assumes a static identity, and challenging one's belief system usually results in insult and apprehension, for being wrong is erroneously associated with failure, when, in fact, to be proven wrong should be celebrated, for it is elevating someone to a new level of understanding, furthering awareness. The fact is, there is no such thing as a smart human being, for it is merely a matter of time before their ideas are updated, changed, or eradicated. And this tendency to blindly hold on to a belief system, sheltering it from new, possibly transforming information, is nothing less than a form of intellectual materialism. The monetary system perpetuates this materialism not only by its self-preserving structures, but also through the countless number of people who have been conditioned into blindly and thoughtlessly upholding these structures, therefore becoming self-appointed guardians of the status quo. Sheep, which no longer need a sheepdog to control them, for they control each other by ostracizing those who step out of the norm. This tendency to resist change and uphold existing institutions for the sake of identity, comfort, power, and profit is completely unsustainable and will only produce further imbalance, fragmentation, distortion, and invariably destruction. It's time to change. From hunters and gatherers to the agricultural revolution to the industrial revolution, the pattern is clear. It is time for a new social system which reflects the understandings we have today. The monetary system is a product of a period of time where scarcity was a reality. Now, with the age of technology, it is no longer relevant to society. Gone with the aberrant behavior it manifests. Likewise, dominant worldviews, such as theistic religion, operate with the same social irrelevancy. Islam, Christianity, Judaism, Hinduism, and all of the others exist as barriers to personal and social growth, for each group perpetuates a closed understanding they acknowledge is simply not possible in an emergent universe. Yet, religion has succeeded in shutting down the awareness of this emergence by instilling the psychological distortion of faith upon its followers, where logic and new information is rejected in favor of traditionalized, outdated beliefs.
The concept of God is really a method of accounting for the nature of things. In the early days, people didn't know enough about how things formed, how nature worked, so they invented their own little stories. And they made God in their own image. A guy that gets angry when people don't behave right. He creates floods and earthquakes. they say it's an act of God.
A cursory glance at the suppressed history of religion reveals that even the foundational myths themselves are emergent culminations, developed through influence over time. For example, a cardinal doctrine of the Christian faith is the death and resurrection of Christ. This notion is so important that the Bible itself states, "And if Christ be not risen, then is our preaching vain, and your faith is also vain." Yet it is very difficult to take this account literally, for not only is there no primary source denoting this supernatural event in secular history, awareness of the enormous number of pre-Christian saviors who also died and were resurrected immediately puts the story in mythological territory by association. Early church figures such as Tertullian went to great lengths to break these associations, even claiming that the devil caused the similarities to occur, stating in the 2nd century, "The devil, whose business is to pervert the truth, mimics the exact circumstance of the divine sacraments. He baptizes his believers and promises forgiveness of sins. He celebrates the oblation of bread and brings in the symbol of the resurrection. Let us therefore acknowledge the craftiness of the devil, who copied certain things of those that be divine." What is truly sad, however, is that when we cease the idea that the stories from Christianity, Judaism, Islam, and all the others are literal history, and accept them for what they really are, which are purely allegorical expressions derived from many faiths, we see that all religions share a common thread. And it is this unifying imperative that needs to be recognized and appreciated. Religious belief has caused more fragmentation and conflict than any other ideology. Christianity alone has 34,000 different subgroups.
The Bible is subject to interpretation. When you read it, you say, I think Jesus meant this. I think Job meant that. Oh no, he meant this. So you have the Lutheran, the Seventh-day Adventist, the Catholic, and a church divided at all. And a church divided is no church at all.
And this point on division, which is a trademark of all theistic religions, brings us to our second failure of awareness, the false assumption of separation through the rejection of the symbiotic relationship of life. Apart from the understanding that all natural systems are emergent, where all notions of reality will be constantly developed, altered, and even eradicated, we must also understand that all systems are, in fact, invented fragments, merely for the sake of conversation. For there is no such thing as independence in nature. The whole of nature is a unified system of interdependent variables, each a cause and a reaction, existing only as a concentrated whole.
You don't see the plug connected to the environment, so it looks like we're free, wandering around. Take the oxygen away, we all die immediately. Take plant life away, we die. And without the sun, all the plants die. So we are connected.
We really must take into account the totality. This isn't just a human experience on this planet. This is a total experience. And we know we can't survive without plants and animals. We know we can't survive without the four elements, And so when are we going to really start taking that into account? That's what it is to be successful. Success depends on how well we relate to everything around us. I'm very aware of the fact that my grandson cannot possibly hope to inherit a sustainable, peaceful, stable, socially just world unless every child today growing up in Ethiopia, in Indonesia, in Bolivia, in Palestine, in Israel also has that same expectation. You got to take care of the whole community or you're going to have serious problems. And now we have to see that the whole world is the community. And we must all take care of each other that way. And it's not just a community of human beings. It's a community of plants and animals and elements. And we really need to understand that. That's what's going to bring us joy, too, and pleasure. That's what's missing in our lives right now. We can call it spirituality, but the fact of the matter is, joy comes from that bliss of connectedness. That's our God spirit. That's that side of ourselves that really feels it. And you can feel it deep inside you.
It's this amazing, wonderful feeling. And you know it when you get it. You don't get it from money. You get it from connection.
Now, if that isn't a hazard to this country, how are we going to keep building nuclear weapons? You know what I mean? What's going to happen to the arms industry when we realize we're all one? It's going to fuck up the economy. The economy that's fake anyway. 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 Which would be a real bummer. You can see why the government's cracking down on the idea of experiencing unconditional love.
Once we understand that the integrity of our personal existences are completely dependent on the integrity of everything else in our world, we have truly understood the meaning of unconditional love. For love is extensionality, and seeing everything as you and you as everything can have no conditionalities. For, in fact, we are all everything at once.
If it's true that we're all from the center of a star, every atom in each of us from the center of a star, then we're all the same thing. Even a Coke machine or a cigarette butt in the street in Buffalo is made out of atoms that came from a star. They've all been recycled thousands of times, as have you and I. And therefore, it's only me out there. So what is there to be afraid of? What is there that needs solace seeking? Nothing. There's nothing to be afraid of because it's all us. The trouble is we have been separated by being born and given a name and an identity and being individuated. We've been separated from the oneness, and that's what religion exploits, that people have this yearning to be part of the overall one again. So they exploit that. They call it God. They say he has rules. And I think it's cruel. I think you can do it absent religion.
Reach your home. That's right, Chief. Fuck anybody who thinks I'm stupid. Oh, suck a dick. I don't fucking know. Carl Sagan. Brilliant.
It's time to claim the unity our outmoded social systems have broken apart, and work together to create a sustainable global society where everyone is taken care of and everyone is truly free. Your personal beliefs, whatever they may be, are meaningless when it comes to the necessities of life. Every human being is born naked, needing warmth, food, water, shelter. Everything else is auxiliary. Therefore, the most important issue at hand is the intelligent management of the Earth's resources. This can never be accomplished in a monetary system, for the pursuit of profit is the pursuit of self-interest, and therefore imbalance is inherent. Simultaneously, politicians are useless, for our true problems in life are technical, not political. Furthermore, ideologies that separate humanity, such as religion, need strong reflection in the community in regard to its value, purpose, and social relevancy. Hopefully, through time, religion will lose its materialism and basis in superstition and move into the useful field of philosophy. The fact is, society today is backwards, with politicians constantly talking about protection and security rather than creation, unity, and progress. The U.S. alone now spends about $500 billion annually on defense. That is enough to send every high school senior in America to a 4-year college. In the 1940s, the Manhattan Project produced the first true weapon of mass destruction. This program employed 130,000 people at an extreme financial cost. Imagine what our life would be like today if that group of scientists, instead of working on a way of killing people, worked on a way to create a self-sustaining, abundant world. Life today would be very, very different if that was their goal. Instead of weapons of mass destruction, it is time to unleash something much more powerful. Weapons of mass creation. Our true divinity is in our ability to create, and armed with the understanding of the symbiotic connections of life, while being guided by the emergent nature of reality, there is nothing we cannot do or accomplish. Of course, we face strong barriers in the form of established power structures that refuse to change. At the heart of these structures is the monetary system. As explained earlier, the fractional reserve policy is a form of slavery through debt, where it is literally impossible for society to be free. In turn, free market capitalism in the form of free trade uses debt to imprison the world and manipulate countries into subservience to a handful of large business and political powers. Apart from these obvious amoralities, the system itself is based on competition, which immediately destroys the possibility of large-scale collaborations for the common good, hence paralyzing any attempt at true global sustainability. These financial and corporate structures are now obsolete, and they must be outgrown. Of course, we cannot be naive enough to think that the business and financial elite are going to subscribe to this idea, for they will lose power and control. Therefore, peaceful yet highly strategic action must be taken. The most powerful course of action is simple. We have to alter our behavior to force the power structure to the will of the people. We must stop supporting the system. The only way the establishment will change is by our refusal to participate, while continuously acknowledging its endless flaws and corruptions.
They're not going to give up the monetary system because of our designs of what we recommend. The system has to fail, and people have to lose confidence in their elected leaders. That will be a major turning point if the Venus Project is offered as a possible alternative. If not, I fear the consequences. The trends now indicate that our country is going bankrupt. The probability is our country will move toward a military dictatorship to prevent riots and complete social breakdown. Once the U.S. breaks down, all the other cultures will undergo similar things.
As of now, the world financial system is on the brink of collapse due to its own shortcomings. The Comptroller of Currency stated in 2003 that the interest on the U.S. national debt will not be affordable in less than 10 years. This theoretically means total bankruptcy for the U.S. economy, and its implications for the world are immense. In turn, the fractional reserve-based monetary system is reaching its theoretical limits of expansion, and the banking failures you are seeing are just the beginning. This is why inflation is skyrocketing, all debt is at record levels, and the government and Fed are hemorrhaging new money to bail out the corrupt system. For the only way to keep the banks going is by making more money. The only way to make more money is to create more debt and inflation. It is simply a matter of time before the tables turn, and there is no one willing to take new loans, while defaults grow, as people are unable to afford their current loans. Then the expansion of money will stop, and contraction will begin on a scale never before seen, ending a century-long pyramid scheme. This has already begun. Therefore, we need to expose this financial failure for what it is, using this weakness to our advantage. Here are some suggestions. Expose the banking fraud. Citibank, JP Morgan Chase, and Bank of America are the most powerful controllers within the corrupt Federal Reserve System. It's time to boycott these institutions. If you have a bank account or a credit card with any of them, move your money to another bank. If you have a mortgage, refinance with another bank. If you own their stock, sell it. If you work for them, quit. This gesture will express contempt for the true powers behind the private banking cartel known as the Federal Reserve, and create awareness about the fraud of the banking system itself. 2. Turn off the TV news. Visit the emerging independent news agencies on the internet for your information. CNN, NBC, ABC, Fox, and all the others present all news pre-filtered to maintain the status quo. With 4 corporations owning all major media outlets, objective information is impossible. This is the true beauty of the Internet, and the establishment has been losing control because of this free flow of information. We must protect the Internet at all times, as it is truly our savior right now. 3. Don't ever allow yourself, your family, or anyone you know to ever join the military. This is an obsolete institution now used exclusively for maintaining an establishment that is no longer relevant. U.S. soldiers in Iraq work for U.S. corporations, not the people. Propaganda forces us to believe that war is natural and the military is an honorable institution. Well, if war is natural, why are there 18 suicides every single day by American veterans who have post-traumatic stress disorder?
Canadian fucking
If our military men and women are so honored, why is it that 25% of the American homeless population are veterans? 4. Stop supporting the energy companies. If you live in a detached house, get off the grid. Investigate every means of making your home self-sustainable with clean energy. Solar, wind, and other renewable energies are now affordable consumer realities, and considering the never-ending rising cost of traditional energies, it will likely be a cheaper investment over time. If you drive, get the smallest car you can, and consider using one of the many conversion technologies that can enable your car to be a hybrid, electric, or run on anything other than establishment fuels. 5. Reject the political system. The illusion of democracy is an insult to our intelligence. In a monetary system, there is no such thing as a true democracy, and there never was. We have 2 political parties owned by the same set of corporate lobbyists. They are placed in their positions by the corporations, with popularity artificially projected by their media. In a system of inherent corruption, the change of personnel every couple of years has very little relevance. Instead of pretending that the political game has any true meaning, focus your energy on how to transcend this failed system. And 6. Join the movement. Go to thezeitgeistmovement.com and help us create the largest mass movement for social change the world has ever seen. We must mobilize and educate everyone about the inherent corruption of our current world system, along with the only true sustainable solution, declaring all the natural resources on the planet as common heritage to all people, while informing everyone as to the true state of technology and how we can all be free if the world works together rather than fights. The choice lies with you. You can continue to be a slave to the financial system and watch the continuous wars, depressions, and injustice across the globe while placating yourself with vain entertainment and materialistic garbage. Or you can focus your energy on true, meaningful, lasting, holistic change, which actually has the realistic ability to support and free all humans with no one left behind. But, in the end, the most relevant change must occur first inside of you. The real revolution is the revolution of consciousness, and each one of us first needs to eliminate the divisionary, materialistic noise we have been conditioned to think is true, while discovering, amplifying, and aligning with the signal coming from our true empirical oneness. It is up to you.
What we are trying in all these discussions and talks here is to see if we cannot radically bring about a transformation of the mind. Not accept things as they are, but to understand it, to go into it, to examine it. Give your heart and your mind with everything that you have to find out a way of living differently. But that depends on you and not somebody else. Because in this there is no teacher, no pupil, there is no leader, there is no guru, there is no master, no savior. You yourself are the teacher and the pupil, you are the master, you are the guru, you are the leader. You are everything. And to understand is to transform what is.
I appeared before the Congressional Committee to tell what I knew of activities which might lead to an attempt to set up a fascist dictatorship.
The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist.
The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society. And we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings.
President Bush signed a formal agreement that will end the United States as we know it, and he took the step without approval from either the U.S. Congress or the people of the United States.
The secret organizations of the world power elite are no longer secret.
It's known as the Bilderberg Group. Could their objective be world domination?
I'm Jim Tucker. I've chased Bilderberg for 30 years. I'll never give up the chase. Bilderberg plan for the whole world is nothing less than world government.
I'm not comfortable with that at all. Who elected these guys to run the planet?
They are the elitists. They feel they should run the world for their own selfish interests.
Now we can see a new world coming into view. A world in which there is the very real prospect of a new world order.
Bilderberg is making great progress toward a world government, and only an educated, informed public can stop them in their tracks.
David Rockefeller admits in his own memoirs that he wants to destroy the United States. Right! He's a traitor!
It's good to be back at the Council on Foreign Relations. As Pete mentioned, I've been a member for a long time and was actually a director for some period of time. I never mentioned that when I was campaigning for re-election back home in Wyoming.
Let us never tolerate outrageous conspiracy theories.
I need you to move off the property, please.
Some shots were fired.
There's Bilderbergers right there.
You mean to poop?
The Trans-Texas Corridor is a vital part because we stop here in Texas. We stop the new world order right here in Texas.
This thing started here. And to save this country, we kill this damn thing here.
There is a chance for the President of the United States to carry out a phrase his father used, and that is a New World Order.
Your New World Order will fall. Humanity will defeat you. The answer to 1984 is 1776.
You're so cute.
In the near future, Earth is dominated by a powerful world government.
Once free nations are slaves to the will of a tiny elite. The dawn of a new dark age is upon mankind. Countries are a thing of the past. Every form of independence is under attack, with the family and even the individual itself nearing extinction. Close to 80% of the Earth's population has been eliminated. The remnants of a once free humanity are forced to live within highly controlled, compact, prison-like cities. Travel is highly restricted. Superhighways connect the megacities and keep the population from entering into unauthorized zones. No human activity is private. AI supercomputers chronicle and categorize every action. A prison planet dominated by a ruthless gang of control freaks whose power can never be challenged. This is the vision of the global elite, their goal. A program of total dehumanization, where the science of tyranny is law. A worldwide control grid designed to ensure the overlord's monopoly of power forever. Our species will be condemned to this nightmare future unless the masses are awakened to the New World Order master plan and mobilized to defeat it. Erected by a secretive group, the Georgia Guidestones are a testament to the elite's plan for a world religion, global laws, with a global court and army to enforce it. And set in stone, it is written that the population never rise above 500 million. In this film, you will learn how our world is truly governed. You will see how highly secretive roundtable groups interlock to form a global intelligence network. This group has been steering planetary affairs for hundreds of years. Now, in the final stage, they prepare for open world government. A goal tyrants throughout history have lusted after. Dr. Michael Kaufman is a published ecologist specializing in ecosystem research, forest ecology, and ecosystem classification. Dr. Kaufman played a key role in blocking the ratification of the Convention on Biological Diversity in the U.S. Senate.
The concept of a new world order has been around for centuries. It's been receiving tremendous play over the last half of the 20th century. George Bush, the first senior president, George Bush, used it a lot in his speeches and really implies that he really wants to see a order in which we have a universal or a global type of governance in which every human being on planet Earth is ultimately responsible for the policies that are being formulated at the international level.
It is a big idea, a new world order.
President Bush said that the New World Order was in tune, and that's what they were working for. The UN is part of that government. They're working right now very significantly for a North American Union. That's why there's a lot of people in Washington that don't care too much about our borders. They have a philosophic belief that national sovereignty is not important. It's also the reason I have made very strong suggestion that we need not be in the United Nations for our national security.
It's really always the same. You go back throughout all of history, the Roman Empire, the Soviet Union, Hitler during the Nazism was always saying that it's going to create the utopia for the average person, when in fact, history always shows that it does exactly the opposite.
Conquest and empire is as old as civilization. Babylon, Egypt, and Greece. They all built empires in an attempt to rule the world. The Roman system at its peak dominated the known world. Complex governmental systems were developed to control diverse populations. During the period between the 15th and 19th century, new empires emerged and again waged war for supremacy. The nobility, as well as the thriving merchant class, were financed by a handful of private banks. Many of the great money houses would hedge their bets and finance both sides of a war. Sophisticated intelligence-gathering networks gave the financiers a clear edge over the governments they were slowly gaining control of. On the 18th of June, 1815, agents of the British arm of the Rothschild family looked on as Emperor Napoleon Bonaparte fought desperately to save his army from the jaws of a British-Prussian pincer attack. A Rothschild agent was able to get the news of Napoleon's defeat at the hands of Lord Wellington to Nathan Rothschild a full 20 hours before the news reached London. Nathan, the head of the British arm of the Rothschild family, put out the rumor to the London Stock Exchange that Napoleon had won the war. Stocks plunged by 98%, and Rothschild was then able to buy up the entire British economy for pennies on the pound. When the news of Napoleon's defeat finally arrived, stocks soared. Britain was now the undisputed ruler of Europe, and Rothschild ruled England. The already dominant British Empire grew even more aggressive. Her troops and bureaucracy spread across the globe. The sun never set on Britannia's holdings.
The banking cartel funded, in fact, since about 1800, they have funded both sides of almost every war. And, of course, they're getting the interest off of the loans that they've given the various governments and the wars that they have actually helped stimulate and create.
By 1900, Germany was a rising force and a leader of the Industrial Revolution.
World War I, for instance, there was absolutely no reason to have World War I, except that it was an ideal opportunity for the banking cartel to make a pile of money by funding both sides of that particular war.
On June 28, 1914, the heir to the Austrian-Hungarian throne, Archduke Franz Ferdinand, was assassinated while traveling in a motorcade. The Black Hand, a Serbian secret society with connections to French and British intelligence, took credit. World War I had begun. Armaments companies financed by Rothschild-controlled banks in Germany, France, England, and Austria bankrolled all the factions. At least 20 million were killed in the war. It was a conflict so terrible the people vowed to never fight again. They dubbed it the war to end all wars.
Question is, why did they want war? Well, first of all, is money and power. But secondly, they wanted to create the League of Nations. They had this in their plans all along, and as a consequence, once the war was over or about to be over, they began to formulate this idea of a League of Nations so this would never ever happen again.
Hundreds of years of practice made the British experts at hiding their empire behind puppet governments and councils. In the name of stopping all future conflicts, they proposed that countries would join a League of Nations. Their true intention was for the League to serve as a framework for world government. President Woodrow Wilson, who had spearheaded the establishment of the private Federal Reserve System in the United States in 1913, strongly supported the establishment of the League of Nations.
Woodrow Wilson was a very naive president. He was basically a college professor that was grafted into this whole system.
The League convened in Paris in 1919, but many nations recognized it as a threat to their sovereignty and refused to join. Frustrated by the U.S. Congress blocking the League of Nations, British intelligence, with the help of the Rockefeller family, set up the Council on Foreign Relations in New York City in 1921. The Council recruited the best and brightest of American life to support the growth of the Anglo-American Empire. The CFR's stated mission is to abolish all nation-states in favor of an all-powerful world government administered by a tiny elite. By 1930, the promoters of world government had split into two interlocking camps. The Fabian socialists centered in London, and the fascists based in Italy and Germany.
National Socialism will use its own revolution for establishing a new world order. Adolf Hitler.
Supporters of the fascists in the United States and England believed that the military should be used to quickly transform the world into a new world order, while the more sophisticated practitioners of globalism stated that incrementalism was the sure path to world domination.
Where's your island?
Congressional Medal of Honor winner Major General Smedley Butler went public in 1934, exposing an attempt by the robber barons to launch a military overthrow of the United States. The war hero testified to the McCormick-Dickstein Committee in Congress that some of the most powerful men in America had tried to recruit him to lead a military coup so they could set up National Socialism in the United States.
I appeared before the Congressional Committee, the highest representation of the American people, under subpoena to tell what I knew of activities, which I believe might lead to an attempt to set up a fascist dictatorship. I was supposed to lead an organization of 500,000 men, which would be able to take over the functions of government.
The fascists had also made deep inroads in England. Edward VIII, King of England, was forced to abdicate the throne because of his public support for Hitler.
Als u zich daarbij is door om dat negatieve probleem dat bekämpfung dieser Lehre und ihrer Organisation handelt, sondern um die Durchführung der positiven Aufgabe der Gefindung des deutschen Parlaments für den nationalen Staat.
Though the German-led fascist camp was strong, the Fabian Socialist bloc was able to maintain control of the U.S., Russia, and England. In the build-up to World War II, and during the conflict, the bankers again financed both sides, just as they had done with Napoleon. With the rise and fall of the Third Reich, Europe lay in ruins. Once again, the elite claimed that only global governance could save humanity from certain destruction. And this time, the elite would succeed in setting up their world body. In April of 1945, at the Presidio Naval Base in San Francisco, the United Nations was founded by the victors of World War II. The United Nations complex was then built in New York City on land donated by John D. Rockefeller. Shortly after the elite established the United Nations as their base in the United States, the newly formed World Council quickly began work on the next phase in their plan, the incremental formation of continental superstates. The first step in their trilateral plan was the creation of the European Union. Unifying Europe had been tried many times and was extremely unpopular. Where Napoleon and Hitler had failed to accomplish their goals using force, the globalists would succeed using stealth. The British spearheaded the formation of the Council of Europe on May 5, 1949. The Treaty of London claimed to only establish trade ties between European nations, like NAFTA or GATT in North America. Its true intention was the formation of a European superstate. planet met in secret at the Bilderberg Hotel in Oosterbeek, Holland. The Bilderberg Group would later admit that their mission was the formation of the EU. Once the EU was established, under the guise of trade deals, a North American Union and Asian Union would be formed. The three interlocking superstates form the core of the global government, while the United Nations would serve as a world regulatory and enforcement body over the Third World subregions. The Bilderberg Group consists of the heads of all of the managing roundtable groups that steer individual countries. Picture the elite power structure of the world as a giant pyramid, with only the elite of the elite at the tip top of the capstone. The group has been so secretive that until the mid-1980s, the controlled corporate media denied its existence. Into the late 1990s, coverage only consisted of rare one-line mentions. With the rise of the alternative media, their stranglehold on information has begun to slip.
On the outskirts of the national capital today, black limousines with darkened windows converged on a hotel where private security guards imposed ironclad control. The limos carried royalty, political power brokers, and industrial titans to a secret meeting that will last all weekend. It's known as the Bilderberg Group. Could their objective be world domination?
Every 4 years, Bilderberg meets in North America, and in June of 2006, we decided to travel to Ottawa, the capital of Canada. The site of Bilderberg. In Bilderberg's long history, many reporters attempting to cover the group have been harassed, detained, and even jailed. I jokingly reassured my cameramen that the horror stories we'd read about were probably exaggerated. I was wrong.
We know reporters get detained at airports. People aren't let in. We know people get sent to the jailhouse in 3 or 4 hours. It happens every time. Well, it happened to Alex Jones this time. They admitted Bilderberg that they'd had pressure put on them by the government to heighten security, and that's why all this happened. Because I was told that by 2 separate people. They scoured our records for hours yesterday and hours today, trying to find something on us. And of course, there was nothing. It was just scary. I mean, I've been all over the world, and I've never seen anything like this. It was like hours of humiliation. And they said, "What are you here for?" And I said, "Well, I'm here to, cover the media, covering a political event. I hope to talk to some members of Parliament." I was answering all the questions. It was clear I wasn't a threat. It was clear I didn't have any criminal record. It was clear I was press. It was clear I was coming to interview people. They were going to deny me. They told me earlier that I was probably going to be denied, and then you guys showed up, and everything changed.
So what's your plan now?
My plan is to go out and try to interview Jim Tucker, try to go down to the Bilderberg Group and maybe catch some of them still arriving, and try to still make a documentary. So, instead of being here at 8 a.m. in the morning when the Bilderberg Group attendees, the 100 elite of the planet, start showing up, we're going to be getting here about 3:30 or so and see if we can catch any of the elites coming in.
What do you think's on the agenda for this edition of the Bilderberg Society's annual meeting?
They're debating the attack on Iran. They're talking about how to take out Hugo Chavez. They're talking about how to get their American Union in that destroys Canadian, U.S., and Mexican sovereignty. So we're talking about the death of Canada us what's happening in there right now. The death of your sovereignty is happening in there right now. CNN has even reported that these individuals have put out the policy reports through the Council on Foreign Relations that writes their scholarly white papers to end the United States, to end Canada, and to end Mexico.
About 10 have come in. They've been coming in slowly in typically big black cars with what appears to be bulletproof glass, and we've got a few pictures of some of the people. We're being kept well back from the building by an awful lot of security people. But, you know, there'll be more security as this thing develops.
Okay, just a reminder to stay off the front, okay?
I am. This is the line. We checked with the city.
Yeah.
Okay.
I came here from upstate New York. I booked a room way in advance. When I checked in at 10 o'clock at night, they told me I had to be out at 8:30 in the morning. And so, of course, I complied to what they wanted. I wasn't happy about it because I had been tired. I drove quite a long way. Then I went down to have something to eat. And I just saw a bunch of security here, and I was wondering what was going on, and I asked questions, and they said that they were having a wedding or they were having some sort of reception. So I decided to ask a couple more questions because I thought it was kind of weird. And then I saw them from my hotel window. They were in the back with flashlights looking at the trees, looking up through the trees, and they were also in front of the hotel, combing. It looked like combing the hotel, so I kind of was wondering what was going on, and I left. I got up this morning, I checked out, and then the fellow that I spoke with, the last fellow I spoke with, said, well, you'll know all about it in the newspaper. Well, I didn't have to wait because there was a group of people out here telling me everything that was going on.
They're not fooling anybody any longer when you've got this many cops, you know, and detaining Alex Jones at the border.
Get them on both sides. Yeah, you crook. Yeah, you're going to go to jail like Ken Lay. Oh, yeah, there's one right there. Hi. Hey, we're not your property. We're not your slaves. We're going to defeat the New World Order. The New World Order is going to be defeated. You realize that? I'm glad you did. Always does throughout history.
As well as the head of its steering committee. The committee he heads selects and invites each year's attendees. In the last decade, the list of attendees has been leaked to reporters by moles on the inside. Veteran newspaper reporter Jim Tucker has been covering the Bilderberg meetings for over 30 years and has physically attended more than 20. We traveled back to our hotel to see if Jim Tucker received the 2006 list.
First heard about Bilderberg in 1975, and I said, I don't believe it. That's not possible. Who in hell's Bilderberg? I spent 20 happy years with metropolitan newspapers. All the wires are clicking at my ear. That could not happen without me knowing about it. The thing that first impressed me most was columns in 1957 by the late, great Westbrook Pegler, widely syndicated columnist. He wrote 2 lengthy columns about how approximately 100 leaders of international finance, heads of state, public officials, were meeting behind armed guards and closed doors on Jekyll Island, sealed off. What are these powerful internationalists doing? And why is it so secret? Why do they have armed guards outside? Why is it sealed off? The newspapers totally ignoring. Not a word. Total blackout in the United States. Since then, I've never stopped pursuing Bilderberg, the whole international gangster organization, led by Rockefellers and Rothschilds, as they manipulate the world for their own selfish interest.
Jim, you've been waiting on the list. You normally get it on the first day. You haven't gotten it. We're told it might come in today. How important is that list?
It's absolutely essential, although identifying people outside, as we always do, is important to find out who is not on their own list. In recent years, someone from Europe has sent a machine copy with a letterhead and so forth without identifying himself. So far, I haven't heard from him.
George. You know it's not real. Yeah, toast.
Well, Bilderberg assumed that name in 1954 at their first meeting as Bilderberg at the Bilderberg Hotel. It's a little bit like Shakespeare's As You Like It. They say to Shakespeare, what do you want to call this book? He says, As You Like It, meaning whatever you want to call it. And they thought it was dictation, so one of his plays is called As You Like It, and the title has nothing to do with the play. So that's how the Bilderberg came out of their name. Now, they have been meeting for half a century. The moneyed class have been meeting. But they decided they have to meet systematically every year, well planned in advance, in addition to maybe other small meetings throughout the year.
So this is the right turn, Jim?
No. This is the global government. They are setting the world agenda. Inside right now, they're deciding on whether or not there will be a war with Iran. They're deciding whether or not taxes will increase, whether oil prices will be suppressed or increased. There's much more on the agenda that we'll be finding out in the fullness of time. But those are three items that are heavy on their list this year.
This is Jim Tucker, ladies and gentlemen. Yes. 27 years covering these crooks. Tucker, pleasure to meet you. The media said he was crazy and didn't exist. Now we forced him.
120 of the world's most powerful men, heads of state from Europe, high officials of the United States government, Treasury, White House, State, Defense. They're setting the world agenda now. The reason they want secrecy is because they're doing evil. Evil is done under the cover of darkness. Good works are done in the sunshine.
Hi, how you doing? Good.
Get off the property, please.
Well, Jim has some questions for you.
I need you to move off the property.
Okay.
Private property.
Sure.
It's a public sidewalk.
Oh, yeah, we are cooperating.
Thank you. Right onto the sidewalk.
Yeah, there's no implication that we aren't
Right
cooperating.
onto the sidewalk.
Okay.
Sure, yeah, thank you.
Great.
Jim has some questions for you.
Again, I need you to stay right on the sidewalk.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
We actually checked with the city. The property line's actually right here.
Also,
That's good. Property line's actually right there.
We are on the verge of a global transformation. All we need is the right major crisis, and the nations will accept the New World Order. David Rockefeller.
It's David Rockefeller and the car in black at the beyond the hotel, and they had no bodyguards. One of my friends shouted, "Hey, Rockefeller!" and he turned back and he was afraid.
My name's Rene. I'm from Manitoba. Drove about 26 hours to get here, just to show that I'm against the Bilderbergers, just to fight for my freedoms, fight for my rights, make sure that my children can grow up in a free country.
My name is Daniel Estrela, and I've been doing this for the last 15 years. I'm from Canada. I'm very proud of my country because, as you can see, there are a lot of people covering the Bilderberg conference. Last year, it took me 14 and a half hours to get to Munich. I was pulled off a plane in Milan. I was pulled off a plane in Munich. They interrogated me 4 hours in both places. I was able to call a friend, a journalist in Rome, as a result of his presence and others. Calling the Foreign Ministry Department in Italy, they backed off and they let me go. They basically told me that they're keeping an eye on me 24 hours of the day. The little hotel where we were staying at, Jim and I, out of the 20 rooms, 6 were occupied, 3 by the CIA and 3 by the German Secret Service. That's how serious these people are, and that's how afraid they are of actually what we may be able to reveal and what we actually do reveal publicly about the Bilderberger intent.
Daniel Estulin has covered the Bilderberg meetings in Europe and North America for more than 15 years. His book, Club Bilderberg, has been translated into more than 20 languages and is a global bestseller. Estulin has photographed many past Bilderberg meetings. Rockefeller frontman Henry Kissinger is always a key participant. Here you see the president of the CFR, Richard N. Haas, followed by Vice Chairman of Rothschild Europe, Franco Barnaby, who is speaking with Henry Kravitz. And behind them is Richard Holbrooke, former U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations. The head of Daimler Chrysler, Jürgen Erich Schrimp, arrives by helicopter. Here, the owner of the Washington Post, Donald Graham, escorts Indra Nooyi, the head of PepsiCo. Queen Beatrix of the Netherlands, whose father, Prince Bernhard, founded Bilderberg, is a leading figure in the group. Of course, globalist kingpin David Rockefeller, seen here with his bodyguard, James Ford, always attends. The then newly appointed World Bank chief, Paul Wolfowitz, is photographed at Bilderberg 2005. It has been reported that Wolfowitz had attended previous meetings, while still the Deputy Secretary of Defense, a violation of the Logan Act. Under the Logan Act, it is a felony offense for any member of the federal or state government to meet with members of a foreign government without the express authority and authorization of the President or Congress. Put simply, it is illegal for members of the government to meet secretly behind closed doors with foreign power brokers due to the problems of corruption and espionage that it breeds. For this reason, many prominent politicians attend, but their names do not appear on the official list. Despite the Logan Act, the governor of New York's name, George Pataki, does appear on the list, and we were able to catch the governor on tape walking with David Rockefeller at Brook Street. Multiple staff members inside Brook Street reported to us that Hillary Clinton attended for half a day. Several armored limos with diplomatic plates did arrive with police escorts and offloaded their passengers in the underground parking garage out of the sight of the press. Former World Bank President James Wolfensohn sardonically stared at our cameras.
They're upset about the fact that they're being exposed.
Well, I'm sure they are. I mean, look at the tinted windows. They don't want to be seen. They don't want even anybody to know they're here. So I'm sure they're ticked. You know, and that's why we're here to try to expose them.
Do you think that they were angry that they were on the front page of the local paper today? You think they're in there reading it right now, Jim?
Yes, I don't think they're happy about it. They prefer nothing at all, no publicity. They prefer absolute secrecy.
Yeah, you better look away. We're not your slaves. You don't own me. Did you get a list of the attendees and everything? Or no?
No, I've asked for one under a slight variation of my name, and I don't know if I'll get it or not. Also, it could happen today. For the last 3 years, I get back to the hotel.
And there's a copy there waiting for you.
Somebody who does not identify himself. I mean, I'm not just not revealing the source. I don't know the source myself. But the facts, because they want the Bilderberg letterhead on it. And it makes a nice memento.
Perfect. Alex.
Yeah.
That's Chalabi, eh?
You think Chalabi?
No, I don't think. I know.
It looked like Chalabi, and it was a fat guy. Yeah. That was Ahmed Chalabi?
Yeah.
Oh, my God. Then they're really going to attack Iran.
So, let's see what I find. Let's see if my mom has an extra set of speakers for one of her old computers.
How do you do it? Want to see the puppy one? Want to see the puppy? Puppy!
the last couple of years, they've been reeling with the amount of leakage that they've been experiencing, so it's getting harder and harder. But again, it will never get too hard for us because of the sources that we have inside, are top-notch sources, people who are actually working for them, the Secret Service, the second layer, people in the Bilderbergers, the clerks, the administrative office. They're there. They are our eyes and ears, and every time there's something out, we always get the information. That's Francisco Pinto Balsamão.
I think that's the Queen.
Oh my God, you can't kiss her hair.
You see her?
We are Holland. What usually happens, the Secret Service guys who are protecting the Bilderberg delegates, the staff, the cooks, the chefs, when they actually get to see and to hear what some of these nasty people are talking about, they're the first ones to look for us and the first ones to make sure that we get the information from the meeting. We're very rigorous with information that does come out. We double, triple, and quadruple confirm the sources, make sure that all the information checks out. A lot of the stuff, the Bilderbergers have planted information, make sure that this disinformation nullifies the accuracy of the reporting, which is why we never publish the first thing we hear.
That looks like Rockefeller.
The decisions that these people take, again, they're not only decisions that affect the business community, they affect politics, business, environment, across the entire spectrum. And these decisions are made and taken by a very elite group of people behind closed doors this year at the Brook Street Hotel. We are not privy to these decisions. We're not allowed to know what they're talking about. But we'll definitely feel the consequences of these decisions over the next 12 months when events which apparently by accident seem to happen, in fact, have been planned right here this year at Brook Street Hotel between 8th and 11th of June.
What does it do when you get 120 of the most powerful people in the world getting together to have meetings with government officials? I mean, that's amazing.
What it is what I mean is that they're planning the corporate agenda. They're not planning the democratic human journey. Mussolini had a definition is when the interests of the corporation take completely over from all other interests. And that's fascism.
He said it should probably be called corporatism.
Well, call it corporatism, call it fascism, call it neo-lib, there's a whole variety of political words, depending on which side of the stripe you come from, to start with, which describes the thing. But what they are describing is the complete end of democracy, the end of what matters to people, the end of what happens to the human journey. And for that reason, I think this is revolting.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're here in Canada today to stand up against the Bilderberg group that is attempting to get rid of the sovereignty of the United States. The truth of your world government has now been exposed. We know you are ruthless. We know you are evil. Today, the Rockefeller, to the Rothschild representatives here, to the Queen of the Netherlands, to all of you, we tell you, you are not our queens. You are not our kings. You are not our gods. We do not belong to you. We are not your slaves. We stand as free humans and stood since the beginning of time against the strong men, against the thugs, against the bullies. We will defeat your world government. We will defeat world taxation. We will defeat your control grid. God is on our side. I stand before the creator of the universe. And I ask the creator of the universe, as our founding fathers did in 1776, to lead, guide, and direct us, and to give us the power and the foresight and the understanding and the will to stand against your entire agenda, including your final plan of world population reduction of 80% that Henry Kissinger penned in 1973. Why do you put mercury in the vaccines? Sodium fluoride in the water? Why? Why do you put cancer viruses in the vaccines? Why have you used depleted uranium now in 4 separate nations? You're arrogant. You have the sickness that elites have had throughout history in their literal and, in some cases, figurative ivory towers. You believe that you're invincible. You will and you are failing now. Your New World Order
an elite organization, and the way it works, the protocol of the meetings is the staff, after they're vetted out, they're told exactly how they're supposed to behave themselves, meaning that they can never address the attendees, they can never speak to them unless they're spoken to first, they can never look them in the eye. They have to approach them from the right side, the people who are right-handed, and from the left side, the people who are left-handed. They can never look them straight on. And needless to say, all the information that is being spoken during the conferences is under no circumstances allowed to come out. That's what they're told. They're threatened with not being able to find another job anywhere in the sector if they reveal any information to the press.
Richard Holbrook?
Ambassador Richard Holbrook thought the peasantry wouldn't recognize him if he took a stroll on the grounds of Brook Street. Holbrook cackled when I told him that we were not his slaves.
Holbrook, we're not your slaves, Holbrook. We're not your slaves. Holbrook, we don't belong to you. We're not your property. We're free humanity. Yeah, there he goes.
Okay, we're going to be going around the back here, guys.
Hey guys, how you doing? There are several rings of security service. The American delegation at every Bilderberg meeting is usually protected by the CIA and a special division of the U.S. Army. The British delegation is protected by the MI6. The Israelis usually are protected by the Mossad. The Ottawa police, in this case, working for the security, they have very little, actually they don't have any information at all on what the meeting is about. They didn't even know who the Bilderbergs are. Then there's an elite private firm protecting the perimeter, doing all the dirty work, such as shooting all the photographers and bothering the protesters. But, you know, that's like piddly stuff. All the heavy stuff is done by the security service, such as the CIA, MI6.
Some years ago, my legs were a little bit stronger than they are now, and I crept over a fence under cover of darkness and approached. The cops started yelling and pointing at me, so I ran with speed I didn't know I still had, and some shots were fired, but they were far above my head. I mean, they were intimidating, but they were not really trying to kill me. Not when sharpshooters are fired far above, 20 feet above your head. Bilderberg was founded by David Rockefeller and the Rothschilds in Europe. They're still the main powers. Baron Evelyn D. Rothschild, the male, attended.
These are the kinds of things meant to scare you. They like this being out there, so we fear them. They want this out there for us to fear.
They are the main powers.
They use these people, and they may not know it. They may be in on it, they may not be in on it, but they use these people to get us to focus on how fearful we should be of them. This gives them power. They use the media in so many ways, even the quote-unquote independent truth media.
Jim just got the official Bilderberg letterhead list from his mole inside the Bilderberg group. Let's go look at it.
That's my opinion on this one.
So, Jim, you got the list.
Yeah. Did we identify Wolfowitz being here because he's not on the list?
No, we positively identified Wolfenson.
Yeah, he's on the list.
Yeah, there's Wolfenson right there, James Wolfenson. But aren't there always people who aren't listed?
Yep. Over the years, we've identified like sometimes one, sometimes three people who are not on their own list who attended.
Now, I think what is very difficult for most people to understand is how such a small group of 125 men and a few women control a population base of 6 billion people. Actually, it's much easier than you think. These people work on what I call systemic methodology.
meaning that you take a pie, just imagine you take an apple pie and you slice this apple pie into lots of very small pieces, and you put in front of each one of these pieces your man or woman of trust. And by controlling this individual, you control an entire organization. For example, if you take Paul Wolfowitz, who runs the World Bank, through him you can control the entire organization. You don't need to control what the dishwasher or the toilet cleaner thinks or does or believes in. You just need to control what he does and what he believes in, and what he does will permeate the entire organization. And that's how you control, with very, very small power base, an entire global population of 6 billion.
Why you don't throw the baby out with the
Bilderberg is
bathwater.
making great progress toward a world government. They have created a superstate in Europe called the European Union. They are intent on creating a Western Hemisphere Union called the American Union. NAFTA is to be expanded into every country in this hemisphere. As NAFTA expands, it will take on the role of the American Union. And only an educated, informed public can stop them in their tracks.
We went into downtown Ottawa and talked to locals to learn if they were aware of the elite meeting in their city.
Hey guys, attention just for a second. I just need to tell you that I've just met here in Canada, and they're trying to get rid of your sovereignty, merging you with the U.S. and Mexico. See, it's not funny, I'm serious. And your news isn't going to tell you about this. This is deadly serious, so I'm just letting you know and I'm telling you about it.
As they say, they are the guys that run the world. They make the decisions for we, and we just carry it out.
Sir, did you hear about the Bilderberg group meeting here in town, the 120 most elite people in the world?
No.
Hey, did you know that the elite's meeting here in town right now? Have you heard about it? 120 crime bosses? None of you have heard of it? None of you guys have heard of the Bilderberg group? They're meeting right now.
In the city, around 10% of the people were aware of the New World Order agenda. When we traveled to Parliament, close to half of the people we randomly spoke to were informed.
Ma'am, what did you say about the American Union?
It's going to end up happening. We don't want it, but it's going to happen.
Why do you think?
Because the Bilderberg Group runs the world.
You have the Trilateral Commission that's also part of the Bilderberg, which is the United States, Europe, and Asia. But most of this is public knowledge. Nobody wants to believe that there are conspiracies, that world leaders are already elected before they're voted on. So here we know that Bernard Lord is part of the outer circle. I was surprised to read that Harper addressed the group in 2003, because my understanding was nobody gets into politics without becoming a part of the Bilderberg group, and then you find out afterwards that that is the case, that they have...
Well, Bill Clinton went there in 91, George Bush Sr. back in like 85.
And Blair, same thing. Who we think that we're electing as leaders have already been pre-picked for us, whether it's liberal or a conservative. They're already part of the group.
They own all the horses in the race.
They own the horses, and I understand that, for example, in the United States, it's a one-party system with two factions, though you think it's two different parties.
Oh, it is, yeah.
So
it's like Bill Clinton constantly vacations with the Bushes, and they call him their son, and they actually staged all that in 92, and all that's come out. It's just all staged. They're not going to let trillions of dollars slip through their hands. The good news is people are waking up, though. When you read human history, when you study it, all you see is elites trying to dominate, subterfuge, Machiavellian backstabbing, and somehow in the last 50 years they convinced Westerners that the government's fine, can do no wrong, trust them. How did this happen?
It's easy to lead sheep. I mean, people just follow. They don't want to believe these things will happen. No way. We'll just follow along with the norm. That's all. It's just makes it easier for everyone.
What's your view on losing Canada's sovereignty?
I like this country to stay as it is, and I love the United States to be there.
Back in Austin, the capital of Texas, the public was frighteningly unaware of the nation's peril.
Have you heard about the North American Union?
Not really, no. I don't watch TV.
No, I haven't.
Interesting. I was not aware of that.
I don't know exactly what you mean. So.
I don't think there's going to be a merger of the three nations.
No, I have not.
No.
No, I didn't know this was happening, so. Yes, I have.
Oh, you have heard about it?
Yes.
After that big rally the other day, don't know about it?
No, I have not.
Have you heard of the European Union?
I have, yes.
Are you aware of the European Union?
Oh, yeah, of course.
Have you heard about the European Union?
Heard about them.
Do you know about the European Union?
No.
Europe, 15-member group expanding.
A what?
15 nations of Europe merging in 2000. For over 50 years, the Bilderberg Group constructed the European Union by stealth under the guise of trade deals. Now the elite are using the same secretive program to complete the North American Union. But this time, superstate integration is on the extreme fast track. International agreements like NAFTA, GATT, and APEC were just stepping stones in the formation of the NAU. The North American Union was officially born at Baylor University in Waco, Texas, on March 23, 2005. The leaders of the United States, Mexico, and Canada told the press that they were only meeting to discuss trade. It soon leaked that a secret meeting had been held during the Security and Prosperity Trilateral Summit. The three governments had refused to release the secret agreement to the people. In September of 2006, their treasonous operation was blown wide open. From September 12th to September 14th, in Banff, Canada, hundreds of elected and appointed government leaders from Canada, Mexico, and the United States met in secret. On the last day of the conference, someone inside the secret North American Union Forum leaked the agenda. The front pages of newspapers across Canada carried the story. The Judicial Watch Foundation submitted Freedom of Information Act requests to obtain the full agenda and minutes of the secret assembly. Many federal agencies refused, citing national security. The foundation finally succeeded and did receive thousands of pages of documents. The documents, marked unclassified, are the blueprints of a shadow government ruling by bureaucratic and executive fiat. The pages chronicle an already operating North American Union. Transportation, law enforcement, agriculture, regulation, banking, manufacturing, construction, education, immigration, and even the military are being merged with no input from the people or their elected representatives in Congress and Parliament. One of the first items on their agenda was to stress how important it was that their plan, quote, be carried out by stealth. The controllers also talked about exploiting the public's fears of climate change to push a continent-wide tax to fund the new government. Globalist tool Robert Pastor is incessantly paraded on the world stage as the man behind the North American merger. When he testified before Congress, he pushed the idea of a continental security perimeter that erases national boundaries and merges the security apparatus.
The best way to secure the United States today is not at our two borders with Mexico and Canada, but at the borders of North America as a whole.
In fact, the North American Command, based in Colorado Springs, Colorado, was clearly running the meeting in Canada. For the past decade, the Pentagon has been training with Mexican and Canadian forces and has openly discussed using them inside the United States for disasters and to quell domestic unrest. There are already over 100,000 non-U.S. citizens serving in the U.S. Armed Forces. The Pentagon is now expanding its recruiting centers in Mexico, the Philippines, and Eastern Europe. Big city police departments nationwide are lobbying to change laws so they can recruit non-citizens to join the police force. What we are witnessing is a Red Dawn scenario in slow motion. Tyrants throughout history have brought in foreigners to oppress their domestic populations. When their coup by stealth was exposed, the three governments went into damage control mode. The Security and Prosperity Partnership quickly staged the show summit that was held in Ottawa, Canada in February of 2007.
It is the only way that we can achieve security and prosperity for our people is through this cooperation. We actually occupy one physical space, the North America. We've also had a chance as foreign ministers to talk about how we cooperate in the region and indeed in the world.
Protesters who were upset about losing their countries and freedoms were not tolerated.
A couple of weeks ago, an Al-Qaeda supposed.
Whatsoever, the Security and Prosperity Partnership has been signed without any sort of parliamentary frame.
Globalist publications have been open with their frustration that the population has not bought their latest PR stunt. As integration inside the European and American unions accelerates, the superstates themselves are being merged. On April 30th, 2007, a summit was held at the White House. The Security and Prosperity Partnership's secretive approach had alarmed the public. So this time, President Bush, German Chancellor Merkel, and EU Commission President Barroso hid their treachery in plain sight.
I thank the Chancellor and Josie very much for the transatlantic economic integration plan.
And for that too, we need to develop a common market, common standards.
So this is indeed a very important agreement, and an agreement that also brings with it the Transatlantic Economic Council to be a permanent body with senior people on both sides of the Atlantic that will look at all those issues in a concrete manner in which way we can make it move forward.
The BBC reported that the US and EU had agreed on a single market. By announcing a new economic community integration, they were simply repeating what had been done in America and the EU on a larger scale. The accord states that the two blocs will aggressively push regulatory convergence in more than 35 areas, from financial services, intellectual property, military, education, mergers and acquisitions. They also agreed to jointly push a global carbon tax.
We recognize that we have a problem with greenhouse gases.
We agree there is a global threat, it's a serious threat. We agree there is the need to establish a limit to greenhouse gases.
We need to discuss the possible pricing of CO2. How can we translate this into a market economic compatible scheme?
We have agreed to establish a high-level group, a forum.
This EU-US result is translated into the G8, debated together with the outreach countries, China, South Africa, Brazil, among others, and India.
A global solution to a global problem.
Bilderberg succeeds, America falls. All the victimized countries lose their sovereignty.
Bilderberg is not a person, it's not an idea, it's an ideal, a very powerful group of people working together and for the positions of ultimate and absolute power, destroying every constitution on earth. No matter how powerful the constitution of the nation is, that's what these people do.
The African Union arose out of the African Economic Community, set up in the early 1980s. The African Union is financed by a consortium of international bodies, governments, and corporations. The African Union Army serves as an enforcement arm for the New World Order's exploitation of Africa. In Asia, APEC and ASEAN have announced plans to form the Asian Union, consisting of Asian and Pacific nations, having more than 3 billion people within its borders.
APEC will become the Asian Pacific Union, and the world is to be divided into 3 great regions for the administrative convenience of the world government in which the UN is to be involved.
As the unions form individually, they are simultaneously merged to form the first planetary government.
They're trying to destroy every nation on earth which is trying to promote progress, because these people basically they are landowners. They don't need progress because they control the land. Then the people who belong to the Council and the Committee of 300, who belong to the Bilderbergers, the British royalty, the Guelphs, the black nobility of Venice and Genoa. These people, they're landowners. The New World Order is the Old World Order. I mean, it's just the names have changed, the appearances have changed, but the concept hasn't changed. The idea is still to bring the men back, kicking and screaming back to the Middle Ages, post-industrial age world order.
One of the things that is very shocking to most Americans is the fact that the United Nations Global Biodiversity Assessment, which came out in 1995, clearly shows that in order to protect planet Earth, we have to go back to a feudal system. They actually said that in the document.
To craft a modern feudal society, the globalists are implementing a standardized North American Union ID card to track, trace, and control their serfs as they travel throughout the 3 regions of the NAU. Building on the massive displacement of humanity caused by globalization, the New World Order is rapidly constructing the physical infrastructure of the North American Union, the NAFTA Superhighway Control Grid.
I'm Arthur Peterson, Colonel retired in the Army. I see things today that are happening that would make my friend who died in World War II turn over in their grave. To think that people would even consider confiscating land of farmers and ranchers and taking their homes away from them, to turn it over to a foreign company in Spain, which was controlled by Don Carlos, I understand, a notorious socialist, and they get the tolls on Texas land for 50 years.
The proposed Trans-Texas corridor would be a patchwork of superhighways and railroads, stretching 4,000 miles from the border of Mexico, cutting through Texas to Oklahoma. A lease has been signed that would make Texas Highway 121 a toll road. A private Spanish company won the bid to build and collect the tolls for the next 50 years. These deals with private companies are being negotiated largely in secret, and many state lawmakers are worried taxpayers are being sold down the road.
Critics say it's a threat to our national security. It's part of a plan for a North American integration being carried out by government and corporate elites without congressional or voter approval.
So, if you see your name with the title Mr. or Mrs., or they use our name in uppercase, this is back to Admiralty law.
The legal fiction is an abstract term to explain a concept, and so is the term straw man.
With debt collectors, people assume when a debt collector comes round that they have actual power. They don't. They have no power whatsoever. They only have the power that you give to them.
Don't obstruct me. I'm not obstructing you. Right. Show us the warrant.
So we don't consent. You need our consent.
That's the end of it.
Do you mind telling me who you
I
are?
won't tell you anything.
So you're a police officer enforcing laws, but you don't know every law, is that right?
90% of the crime, or 99% of the crime they perceive that is crime, is actually called victimless crime. There is no victims. And crime can only exist if there is a victim.
You know, we've seen police officers more interested in becoming debt collectors and enforcing policies, you know, such as speeding tickets and fines and things like that, because they're easy targets.
Once you comprehend the difference between lawful and legal, and ultimately what your legal fiction straw man is, the fear of debt collectors, police, and authority just goes away. If you live in the UK, you are led to believe that the Queen is the only sovereign. This is wrong. The Queen is given authority through the coronation oath. Her oath was a binding contract between the Crown and the people of this nation. This means that we, the people, gave her her sovereignty. And as everyone knows, you can't give away something you do not possess yourself. That means that each and every one of us is sovereign, we each have supreme independent authority over our own flesh and blood human body. The problem is, we have forgotten we are powerful. We have forgotten that we belong to and are part of one of the most amazing species that to our knowledge has ever existed. We have become media obsessed and in turn obsessed with our own appearance and the way people think about us. The TV is king, but now that is slipping to the constant need to be in touch with our friends. Everything is about fear. Fear of debt, fear of terrorism, fear of ill health, or fear of climate change. This keeps us thinking that we need our government to protect us and rule us. With all this distraction, it is no wonder that most of us didn't notice the massive fraud that our countries and nations around the world have pulled on us. But as you will learn, government is a creation of man, and a creation of man can never be above man. They always need your consent, and this is where your power really lies. With knowledge always comes power, the power not to fear, the power to take a stand against anyone or any corporation that threatens you, the power to say no. It has been said that you need to know that you're in a cage before you can escape from that cage. Let's look into how you're being tricked and how your power is being hidden from you. If you've never heard of the terms legal fiction or straw man, then what you're about to learn is something that sounds so astonishing that it couldn't possibly be true. If I were to tell you that paying your tax, getting a driver's license, registering your car, paying fines, and attending court are all optional and that you are conned into agreeing with them, what would you think? All statutes and acts are optional too. Your straw man is a fictitious legal entity created at your birth through your birth certificate and the registration of that birth.
Okay, my understanding of the legal fiction, which is also referred to as a straw man, the way I explain it when I do talks, I keep it really, really simple. And what I do, I liken it to a game of Monopoly. Now, in a game of Monopoly, you actually have a little token, like a dog or a battleship or a hat, like a little top hat, and you move it around the board. Now, I believe that they actually give us a fictional entity which we can actually use or not use. And I believe this is and a lot of other researchers do as well, that this is your name in either uppercase or with a title.
But when each person is born, whenever a human being is born, there's two entities. One is the real entity, which is the human being, the flesh and blood, and the other is a legal fiction, a fictional entity that is nothing more than a piece of paper, the birth certificate. Again, we're duped into believing that these are one in the same, and so we're tricked into representing the legal fiction, the straw man, that birth certificate. So when people get fines and things like that, it's actually consulting the legal fiction, the non-existent entity, the corporate entity that is owned by corporations.
You have any interactions with the bureaucracy, okay? They're not interacting with you, they're actually interacting with your legal fiction, because they can't deal with a flesh and blood human. Yeah, they have to deal with another corporation.
When you start to break down the words that we use, and you start to look at the roots of all these words, and you actually look at where these words, what these words actually really mean, you start to get an idea of what's going on. The word corporation is very, very specific, because it's corporation, it's dead speak. So a corporation is something that's dead. It's an entity that exists only in a legal framework. It doesn't exist in any other framework at all. It only becomes an entity through legal mechanisms, legal means.
In essence, when you were born and far too young to understand, a company with your name was created through your birth certificate. When your parents registered your birth, they actually created a company and handed ownership of that company and you over to the state. It is important to remember that your parents were tricked and had no idea this was happening. This is why the state can take children from their families and it not be classed as kidnapping. They own your child.
They own 1/10. Because they registered the child, they have 9/10. Possession is 9/10 of the law. But there's 1/10 floating about somewhere. And the government have claimed that 1/10. So when the child, because I've had it from social workers, at least now 3 social workers on separate occasions have come out of audiences and actually said to me, and what you're saying is because we have to get the birth certificate within 48 hours of taking the child. And if they can't get the birth certificate, they have to reapply to be able to get the birth certificate. They have to get it because that is proof of who the slave is, what the slave is. And actually, in legal terms, they're actually only entitled to the birth certificate and not the child. To take the child on the pretense that they are this legal personality is theft. So in legal terms, it's kidnapping. But the social services can use legal kidnapping because everything is okay as long as it has the stamp legal applied to it. That includes war, genocide, anything is okay as long as it's okay, it's legal.
The same thing also happens when you register your car. You get a document back saying you are the registered keeper and not the registered owner.
So yeah, obviously we've just spoken about registering children, and the other thing that we register though is our vehicles. And obviously either of those can allegedly be taken off you at some point in time, which is quite interesting. The 2 registered items are the things.
You are the registered keeper of your car. You're not the owner, you're the keeper in their eyes. Now they'll argue that point, and a lot of people will argue that point, but it's quite easy to quell this argument and say, well, okay, if you don't put jacks in the car, then they'll come and take your car. Now, in the legal world, taking anything from someone without a legal mechanism to do
Power
so
on.
is theft.
Bluetooth pairing.
The legal system cannot deal with humans. It can only deal with pieces of paper. Only common law.
Bluetooth connected.
You created a piece of paper with your name. It can only deal with pieces of paper. Only common law can deal with humans. So at your birth, you created a piece of paper with your name on it, in capitals, just like any other corporation. This is done to dupe you later in life into thinking that you are the legal entity and not you. Then imaginary penalties and costs are imposed on the straw man, and you, thinking you're it, pay them.
And it's kind of like an overcoat, this legal fiction. As soon as you put it on, as soon as they invite you to put this overcoat on, and you do so, now they can grab hold of the overcoat and throw it in jail with you in it. But until you put that overcoat on, they can't do anything to you because you are not that name. You think you are, you're taught you are, but you're not.
The deception is done through the manipulation of words and language.
But that to me is legalese. It's just jargon that no one really understands, and because no one really understands it, no one ever questions it. We basically have a discussion that everybody is taught incorrect, but because everybody's taught incorrect, they believe it's correct.
Legalese is a whole language of its own. It's a complete legal jargon that's not really designed for anybody to understand it other than those that are supposedly supposed to be enforcing it. And it's something that's so complicated that not even police officers understand what they're saying.
What is wonderful is that they language called legalese, and it has a completely different interpretation from English. We're supposed to have this sort of understanding that we were within the law, and yet they're not even using the same language as we are.
The easiest way to understand legalese is to realise that there are many English words that have more than one meaning, depending on whom you are talking to. If I were to ask you what a person was, you'd probably say a human being. But that's you or I. If you were talking to someone in the law society, i.e. a police officer, lawyer, judge, etc., they have a different dictionary to you or I, and person could mean company or corporation, i.e. the legal fiction.
If you tell a lie often enough, it becomes truth, or certainly the perception of truth. So legalese is jargon that nobody understands other than those who actually come up with a jargon that really, really deeply understand it. And even police officers don't understand it, or magistrates, or even judges for that matter.
Tax is probably the best way, the only way better than fractional reserve banking to starve a community is taxation. And it wouldn't be that case if the tax was actually spent on the people and on the land, but because it's not, it becomes a starving of the people. This is again comes back to corruption. And tax would be fine. We'd be living in an amazing health service, incredible roads, all the rest of it, if all the money that went into the taxation pot was paid for what it was supposed to be for. My understanding is it isn't. The problem that we have is the implications for its non-use is that, other than fraud, it's the only debt that can deprive you of your liberty. It's the only debt that can put you in jail for is tax evasion or tax fraud, which is pretty serious, really, because you can ignore as many credit cards or loans as you like, and you can never be put in jail for any of that. But if you try and not pay your tax for a while, they would really like to let you know about that. Funny thing is, I don't see many representatives of people like Amazon or big corporates that aren't paying their tax in the slammer. Maybe they should be.
Income tax in the UK first started in 1799 as a temporary measure to cover the costs of the Napoleonic Wars. It is still a temporary tax today, which expires each year on the 5th of April and has to be renewed as a provision in the annual financial bill. Income tax was withdrawn in 1816, but was re-established in 1842 and has stayed since. Because of this, human beings are the only creatures on the planet that pay to live on it. The government does not own the product of your labour. If they did, you would be a slave. Since they do not own the product of your labour, then taxation can be defined as theft, or more accurately, extortion and blackmail. No man can own another, so no man can own the fruits of another man's labour. Most people will argue that it is a necessary evil, and it's legal because the government say that it is. How else would we pay for hospitals, police, roads, and so on? Well, reaching into your own pocket to help a good cause is noble. Reaching into someone else's pocket under the threat of force is despicable. Here is a quick analogy. I run a construction firm, and I knock at your door and demand £10,000 to build an extension, or I'll take all your stuff and throw you in a cage. Essentially, that's what the government do when they tax you. They still are going to supply you with services and protect you, but if you don't pay them, just like the mafia, they are the ones that come after you and use force and violence to get the money out of you. The trouble is, most people never look at these situations from these angles, and so rarely see the deception that is constantly being pulled over our eyes. A large percentage of all the tax you pay is used on war, bailing out the banks, and paying off the national debt. It has been calculated that 47% of all your income is spent on tax. You work 5 to 6 days a week and get to keep 54% of your wages. Then you have to pay for your mortgage or rent, gas, electricity, water, food, clothes, and that's just the basics. No wonder both parents have to work and work constantly, unlike families of just 50 years ago. You are a slave, and you are in a metaphorical cage that, just like Neo, you cannot touch, taste, or smell. A prison created by the mind of man. Governments essentially run human farms and feed you the perception of freedom. Governments do not make money within themselves. The government's primary function is to trick money out of your pocket and feed it into their business, so they can carry on with wars, deception, and human farming, all in plain sight.
They have no lawful basis for whatever they do. There's, they might claim they have a legal basis. Now, legal is a different thing altogether. It's essentially based on contract. You have to contract with them before it becomes law.
This is a prison without bars. This is a prison without big walls to keep them in. It's just a prison of the mind.
The main implication of not paying tax is that you'll grow a set of balls and you'll turn into an adult. That's the main implication. The three functions of money are distinguished as 1. A store of value or purchasing power, the ability of an item to hold value over time. 2. A medium of exchange. Money serves as a medium of exchange, i.e., an asset that the sellers will accept as payment. A medium of exchange allows people to eliminate the use of barter. 3. A unit of accounting, a way of placing a specific price on economical goods and services. As a unit of accounting, the monetary unit is used to measure the value of goods and services relative to other goods and services. Money, in its modern form, arose from goldsmiths who retained gold and other precious metals in their safes, and in exchange they gave certificates to prove the deposits. People then started to exchange the certificates for goods and services. And the goldsmiths very quickly realized they could make a lot of money out of just looking after other people's valuable goods. But now no longer a goldsmith, but running a deposit facility, took in gold and other precious metals as deposit and issued deposit notes that the public used as money, backed by the gold in the deposit facility's safe. The goldsmith soon realized that very few people actually redeemed the gold, and so he started to give out loans in the form of deposit notes, knowing that he only needed around 10% of actual gold in his safe, as that would cover, even on a busy day, the amount of people exchanging certificates for gold. The deposit facility would then require the loan repaid plus interest, and this was the birth of modern banking. Through the years, money has been backed by, given a store of value, by the silver standard and gold standard, meaning you could redeem the note for gold, just like it says on this US note here, if you so required. On the 21st of September 1931, the gold standard was abolished in the UK, and on the 13th of August 1971 in the United States. Since 1971, the majority of the planet now use fiat currency. Fiat currency is money backed by nothing and has no value. It only has value because it's decreed as such by the government, and more importantly, we all believe it has value. The only entities that have the legal authority to create money are the Treasury and the banks, and they create it out of nothing. Martin Wolf, the Financial Times chief economic commentator, said this. Only 3% of money is physical and 97% is electronic, and this electronic money is completely controlled by the banks. Those that have the legal authority to create money are the Treasury and the banks, and they create it out of nothing. Martin Wolf, the Financial Times chief economic commentator, said this.
The essence of all contemporary monetary system is creation of money out of nothing by private banks, often foolish lending. Martin Wolf.
Only 3% of money is physical and 97% is electronic, and this electronic money is completely controlled by the banks. To repeat again, the banks create money out of nothing and then lend it to you and ask you to work using the most precious commodity on the planet, your human energy, to pay back the loan plus interest. Money is essentially a claim on human labor and can also be defined as debt. A debt is created for you to pay back.
Most those don't understand is when you go to a bank and you apply for a mortgage and you fill out the agreement, you actually create the money there and then. The bank just then facilitates the credit back to you. But when you're filling out the agreements, they also get you unknowingly, although it is in the terms and conditions, if you look closely, to sign over your power of attorney, which means they can then change that any agreement and write agreements for you, but by the bank in your absence, because you've given them power of attorney. And this is what's gone off here, and people have finally had enough and are waking up and saying, we're not having this anymore. The banks we know are corrupt. The government we know is bought and paid for by the banks, corrupt. And the people are now starting to stand up and say, we've had enough.
So why don't the banks just print money and get rich that way? Well, because they need you. They need you to create a promissory note in the form of an agreement. A promissory note is a species of money, and when you complete and sign the agreement, the document now has value, just like a banknote. So, at the heart of money lending is a massive fraud. You create the money with the authority of your signature and the creation of a promissory note that the banks then securitize, making them more money. Then the bank makes you believe you have borrowed the money and requires you to pay it back plus interest. Please remember this when you get to the section about debt later on in this documentary. During this documentary, you will hear people talk about promissory notes and bills of exchange. A promissory note is a promise to pay and is created by you, the debtor. And a bill of exchange is an order to pay and is created by the creditor. And they both have value.
The way I try and explain the whole crux of the financial system is what I normally do when I'm doing a talk. I have a little bag of marbles, and I have 10 marbles in there if I haven't lost one of them. And so what I do, I sort of get the marbles out, show everyone, right, 10 marbles, put them back in the bag. I say, right, is there anyone here that can get 11 marbles out of this bag? And they're all looking at me like I'm mad. I say, well, that's how the banking system works. It's absolutely crazy, because what they do, they create a certain amount of money, but then they want more back. But hang on, that interest that they want more back doesn't exist. It can never exist. So two things have to happen as a result. One thing, the supply of money, or marbles, whatever we're talking about, has to increase. And not only does it increase, it has to increase exponentially, more on top of more. So it's basically the curve is going up and up and up and up. The other thing that happens is people are always, it's like musical chairs. You know, if we all stand up and dance and then we all sit down, but a chair is taken away, somebody is going to end up on the floor. Somebody can't find that money to pay back the because that money does not exist, and this creates the poverty and crazy competition and not enough to go around. And this is the biggest problem.